Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after our lunch break. I just want to make sure that we've had all the input from staff. I know we announced this before the lunch. Is there any further input or any further presentation by staff to the board? Okay. Madam Clerk, are we up for our first, on this agenda item? This will be public comment.
So just to reiterate, we're on item 4 from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing to adopt an ordinance rescinding Chapter 17.95 and replacing it with a new Chapter 17.95 banning or regulating cannabis cultivation and related commercial activities, and to certify the environmental impact report. Just as a note, we can have 5 people in the aisle. The rest of you will have to go outside the door. Or back to your seat. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, and for the folks in our other adjoining room, if you wish to speak during the public comment, we're allowing 5 people to stand in line to speak. And if you wish from the other room to speak, you're going to have to come into these chambers and look through the window to make sure that we can allow 5 people and 5 people only standing up. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but unfortunately, we need to provide access in case there's an emergency. Now, I understand we have one person here that's disabled, and I'm going to request, if I could, to have him speak in a group of 5, so we can get him mobile up to the podium. Okay. I want to remind everybody you have 3 minutes, and I will enforce the 3-minute rule, as I always do. And I apologize if those folks that have a longer requirement, but you may want to speak to somebody to see if you can get your point across through that other person. Having said that, our first speaker, please. Mr. Fry.
George Fry. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. I worked as a land use planner in this county for 10 years, and I've reviewed many environmental impact reports. I'm satisfied with the environmental impact report for this project. I would like to preface my remarks with the urgency ordinance let the cat out of the bag. And I would like to state that I hope that this board has the infinite wisdom to pass an ordinance that is extremely rigid. And I would like to see in this ordinance a very rigid environmental set of requirements. I have 2 questions that I heard in the planning director's comments. One of them, I didn't catch what they were going to do with lands that were unclassified as to any requirements for having grows. And the other one was why a sunset clause after 5 years? Does that mean that everybody that has a registered grow after 5 years, they have to cease and desist? And that's about all I have to say about it. I just hope that you understand that the cat is out of the box and that we need to deal with this project in a real, rational, logical way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Ladies and gentlemen, in this situation where you have questions that you would like to address, I'm going to ask staff to make note of those questions, and they can respond at their choice after all the public speaking has taken place on the agendized item. Please keep in mind that it's not mandatory they respond. It is the choice of staff and the choice of the board. And we will answer those questions after the final public speaking person addresses the board for the agendized item. I hope that's clear. Okay? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Hello to the chairman and the Board of Supervisors, as well as all the people that have joined us today for this discussion and our dialogue on this topic. My name is William J. Drury III. I'm 59 years old and have been disabled since I developed renal cell carcinoma in 1998. I had my left kidney nephrectomy, which went on for 14 hours. Basically, that's where they cut you open like a fish and take a lot out of you. Since then, I've developed many other things, including anxiety disorders, hypertension, coronary artery disease, severe depression. I can go on a lot of stuff, diabetic neuropathy, and multiple other infections and situations. I've had 4 heart attacks. I've been in 4 car wrecks where I was not at fault. I can go on, but nevertheless, I'd like to I think I made my point on my illnesses. Cannabis helps me deal with a number of my chronic problems such as pain. I recently started vaporizing cannabis in place of smoking, mainly for health reasons. As a result, I've experienced much better response due to my ills. I'm prescribed 10 Dilaudid a day, number 8s, as well as MS Cotton 2 times a day. I have reduced my need for Dilaudid from 10 down to 3 by using medicinal cannabis. By vaporizing it, the effect of the combination of the two is unreal. It does a lot. Even helps me with my neuropathy, which is really surprising. I also use cannabis in a recreational setting and find it to be very therapeutic as well as socially acceptable, which also makes me feel like I'm not a single person. Oops, sorry. I'm not single in this situation. I have other people that I can join with. I have grown cannabis for many years, and I've never used chemicals that would harm my property, nor the water I drink from my own well. I have a well, and I live in Copperopolis, and I have a well, and my septic tank is quite a ways from my well, but my use of chemicals is also not there. What we need is a fair opportunity to provide ourselves with both medicinal as well as recreational cannabis. Laws that would forbid this would possibly make me a criminal. We can make sure things harmful to our shared environment are not used. It could be part of the process for growing cannabis. We cannabis growers need to provide access to as part of the agreement to grow cannabis already, so that you can check to make sure if we're putting chemicals in the ground. I live
Thank
on a
you, sir.
meager.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
Can I just finish one thing?
No, sir. 3 minutes, please.
I just want to say I live on a meager income.
Thank you very much, sir.
I can't afford to buy it.
I understand.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Here we stand again. 2 years has gone by, and a lot of things have been said, a lot of things have been tried to ban this marijuana in this county. The commercial cultivation is what we're talking about, not any personal use of marijuana. So we're talking about the commercial cultivation or commercial activities of marijuana, not anyone's personal use. So I've just a short statement. Calaveras County Cannabis Regulation Ordinance has been a failure. After 2 years, we have more illegal grow sites than when the ordinance was first put in place. The estimates ranged from 1,000 to 2,000 grow sites in our county. At the time of the ordinance was put in place under state law, the only growers who were grandfathered in and could continue to operate were those that were part of a legally formed cooperative or collective prior to the end of 2015. No other growers were allowed to cultivate until the state got its licensing program in place. All of the growers in Calaveras County are operating illegally under state law, as they do not have a state-issued license, which is required to cultivate. And you can look that up. It's in California Health and Safety Code, section 11362.777. It's obvious to most people that the growers do not intend to follow the rules and regulations set up either by the county or the state. They try to intimidate, bully, threaten, and litigate everyone that tries to stand in their way. There is ample evidence of that. It is time to stop this charade and put an end to commercial cannabis activities in our county. A ban can work and has worked in other counties. Growers will move on to other counties that don't have a ban in place. The state and county can eliminate growers over a period of time, as the growers will not be able to sell into the state cannabis program. I urge the Board of Supervisors, you, to vote yes on the ban ordinance on all commercial cannabis activities in our county to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. Let's end this now. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Hello again. Bob Bowerman, District 5, Calaveras County Normal. The urgency ordinance was not a test. It was temporary until we got regulations in place, not a ban. It was not meant for that. No matter how you look at it, if you put a ban in, it's called bait and switch. It's unethical. A lot of people believe it's illegal. I'm sure we'll find that out. And it's just plain wrong, okay? You're going to hurt a lot of people over reefer madness and old thoughts. If you go to cannabisregulations.org, you'll find out what we're going to be doing. We're bringing regulations to the table. We're going to put it on the ballot. We're going to have the public decide, not you. Our answer to a ban done by the supervisors is real simple. The answer is no. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to take this issue to the public. We've come up with a regulation package that should please most everybody, not everybody. We're going to take care of residential areas. We're going to take care of the problems that everyone was talking about. We're going to bring common sense cannabis to the table for Calaveras County. It's going to be supported by the majority of the public, and we're going to make a law, and we're going to do that in June of 2018. I appreciate everybody's efforts on both sides of the table, but it's time to look at this a little different. We now have 30 states with legal cannabis, medical, 8, and the list goes on and on. The fact is that cannabis is legal. Get over it. Work with it. Let's make it work for our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
My name is Ron Huckabee. I'm from Valley Springs, and I appreciate what the sheriff said, that no matter whether you ban or don't ban, there are going to be illegal grows in Calaveras County, whether you ban it or not. Statistics, Department of Public Safety for Colorado. I hope everybody has gone to at least a state who has some background in this type of law. These are some statistics. All of this is per 100,000 people. Almost 40% increase in hospitalization since the implementation of their marijuana laws. 30% cost up in emergency room visits. The increases occurred across all age groups, with the biggest jumps in the 8-year-old and younger age group. This is poisoning. This is from the Rates of hospitalization, this is from the poisoning index, Rocky Mountain Poisoning System. Human marijuana exposure calls to Rocky Mountain Poison and Drug Center by age group 2006 to 2016. 100% increase between 9 and 17-year-olds poisoning in their hospitals, seeing people. 300% increase from 0 to 8 years old. You're holding our youth's futures in your hands. I've heard a lot of talk about money, and I've heard a lot of talk about the enforcement area. I'm really glad that you brought up that the fact there's going to be marijuana grows illegal in Calaveras County. The rates are phenomenal. If you go on SB 23-283, Department of Public Safety in Colorado, there's a 147-page report. This is just from the public health part. The only place where marijuana offenses have increased is elementary and secondary schools, up 34% from 2012 to 2014. Our youth's futures in your hands. Reported marijuana use in the past 30 days by number of reported days, it's up 12% from 1 to 7 days. It's up 14%, 22 days out of 30 days a month. Somebody is using marijuana, and it's up 14% since the institution of the law, the marijuana law in the state of Colorado. Driving under the influence in Denver by impairment reason, marijuana up 100% in 3 years. Admissions in which marijuana was listed as a primary drug increased by 48%. You people are elected officials. You're here to do the job to protect this county. And to protect it, you need to enforce the ban.
Thank you.
Hello again. My name is William Hand, and a little bit about me. I started smoking when I was kind of young, and I'm a high school graduate, college graduate, restaurant manager for 13 years, mortgage broker for 18 years, military policeman for 4 years. So I think that what he said about poisoning youth has some merit, but there's also people that overcome that and are really productive in society. So take that with a grain of salt. I understand the youth, and I have 7 grandchildren, 5 children, okay? So I understand that, okay? Funds for Measure C were used to help balance the budget. Imagine that, okay? But yet I still got this little thing in the mail. It's a ballot measure for firefighters. Why are we underpaying our firefighters and going to burden the existing tax basis when we could have taken marijuana money or cannabis money and helped fund the fire department and help fund the sheriff's department so they don't go to the different counties that have higher rates of pay? I understand what he's talking about, okay? And I want the protection. I am a legal grow that I have a cooperation or a co-op that we have medical patients. So I'm one of those people in the state that is legal, and we are also legal within the county, okay? The bait and switch, I spent over $400,000. Our family has spent over $400,000 in the last 3 years on developing our property and paying the county and the different services within the county, the Cinders Ace Hardware, the different places in Arnold, the different places at Angels Camp. All our money has stayed in our county, okay? The special election, I don't understand. I'm going to vote for it, but why wasn't my money, my marijuana money, to help pay for those firefighters who are making, what, $4.34 an hour if they can drive a truck? $3.73 an hour if they hold a hose? That's ridiculous. Please understand that you have a new tax base that you're creating to not overburden the existing tax base. Not everybody in this county is rich and land farmers. This is a below median income county, okay? There are still some poor families in here. The funds will come every single year, okay? We need a compromise and propose an ordinance. The proposed ordinance is no compromise. There's only 9 industrial areas on the land map, and no ag land on the land map that you've created out there. I can't see any yet to where I can go buy property. Please go to a rural residential of 5 acres more with your own setbacks to make it residentially fine, okay? Don't be the county supervisors that lead us down the road of bankruptcy,
Thank you, sir.
please.
Hi, guys. Hope you had a good lunch. I'm Eloisa from Rancho Calaveras. I'm an employee of Frog Farms, and I'm one of those poor residents that he was talking about, where there was days where I had to decide, what do I feed my grandchildren? Because I'm raising my grandchildren. What do I feed them? Do I give them macaroni and cheese today and just that? Or do I get this chicken and just go ahead and just let them have that chicken and me not eat for the day? Last 6 months I've been working on this farm. You know what I can do? I can go to the store today and go buy a roast for my family. You know how big that was? To have them and to be able to cook a roast for them. When the kids need shoes, I can go and buy them shoes now. I don't have to rely on the county to help me support those grandchildren. I'm supporting them. And I'm doing it by getting a job here. If I got a job in Stockton, or if I got a job out in Galt or whatever at a minimum wage, number one, I'd have to get a babysitter for my grandchildren, because I wouldn't be home on time in order to take care of them when they got out of school. So what's going to happen? The county's going to have to hire somebody to take care of those grandchildren in order for me to get home to raise them. I live local. I work local. I work 4 miles from home, 3 miles from where the kids are. It's important for me to have my job, you know? And if you guys take this away, you're not just affecting the cultivators, you're affecting families. I'm not the only family on this farm. There's 5 families that it will affect. 5 families that will have to go on the system. Because we can't afford to feed our kids. We can't afford to pay our house payment. CCWD, shit, there goes our water, or here goes that 10-day notice, and goes our bill because we can't pay it on time because we didn't have the money. But now we have the money, and we can pay our bills on time. We don't have to rely on food stamps. We can pay, and we can feed our kids. If you ever lived in my shoes or walked in my shoes and knew how it was to think about how to feed your family. You have you have to think about how you're going to do it. In the last 6 months, not have to worry about thinking about, just to be able to make a list is fucking awesome. Is awesome. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
I'm Chris Craker, AIA. I'm an architect. I've been an architect for 35 years. We've been designing grow houses for the last 5 years, all around Northern California. Our job is to make them safe, secure, and to meet all health regulations. That's essential for any of the facilities, and I think that's what you need to think about when you are considering serious regulations for this industry, because if you don't, you're going to get a lot of bad work out there that's going to be undersupervised and unsafe. Our intent is to make them to make them safe, make them state compliant with state laws, to make them work with California laws, and the very strict Title 24 requirements. We make our buildings, we design our buildings and make sure that they are approved to be totally compliant with ADA accessibility. ADA accessibility. William back there, who just went outside, he can't even get into your bathrooms. They are totally illegal. But ours are all accessible for people to live in, or to work in, and to get into. And I think those are the things that you really should consider. They're climate controlled, they have security, and they have safe regulations for you to be able to collect taxes and make them safe places to be. So I hope that you will support good regulations that will make them available, make them safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Board, Sheriff, Council. Today you face an important decision that will have a lasting effect on Calaveras County. I urge you to consider the full impact of a ban on commercial cannabis and its devastating social and economic impact. Some of you ran on the ban platform. Your constituents wanted this due to the influx of illegal grows that our county faced in recent years. Due to regulation and taxation, these illegal grows are being dealt with. We heard today that the sheriff has taken out 53 locations and over 100,000 plants. It's fantastic. I commend the Calaveras Sheriff's Office for their hard work, but with a ban, the very people who give farmers a bad name are the only ones that are going to be able to stay. It's important to make a distinction between illegal growers and small registered farmers. Registered farmers care about the environment, about the groundwater, about having good relationships with their neighbors, about donating to the community, about being a part of the community. With a ban, you force those farmers to go somewhere else. They're not going to be here. And who's going to fill that gap? People that don't care about following the laws. The second major effect is its devastating effect on our economy. Without cannabis and its revenue and its stimulus, we're in a grave situation. I think we've heard about it today with the auditor. It's not looking good. The Calaveras County has a massive unfunded pension liability. To throw away a tax revenue of $16 million per year when we have an unfunded pension that's going to be $7 million next year and it's going to raise over time, how can you do that? Change can be scary. I understand that. But we have to face the facts. Cannabis is modern agriculture. Calaveras has the perfect climate to farm. Let's not throw this opportunity away. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Walsh, and I have a commercial farm, total compliance with the county. And I am going to keep this short because he said a lot of what I was going to say. And I just urge you guys to really consider just the regulation. It's so important. And for myself, at one point, I lost everything I had when the economy took a dump. And cannabis was my second chance to get myself back up on my feet, work. We have a beautiful farm where we're doing really, really well. And the money we paid in taxes this year was substantial. So consider regulation. I would appreciate it. And thank you for making things so clearly, Sheriff.
Thank you.
James Walker, Murphy's. I'm not a grower, I'm a chef. I grew up in this county. I've been before you guys a couple times. I want to start by saying the first time I ever saw a large amount of marijuana, which to me was a large amount of marijuana, I was 12 or 13. We were shooting skeet out Camp 9 Road, Buddy and his dad. When we got done, we still wanted to do shooting. We were out of skeet. We went to look for the ones we missed. I noticed these bags up in a treetop down in this ravine. His dad said, "Hey, James, climb up there and see what's up there." And I started throwing these things down. There was about 5 of them. Every single one of them was filled with 1 pound bags of marijuana. My friend's dad put it in the car. He was scared driving it back to his house, even though it was a couple miles, and we called the sheriff. This is 1983. This is not stuff that's come along with a UO ordinance or anything else. It's always been here. I heard reality thrown around a lot today, and I like that. I love what the sheriff's been doing. You got to realize, you cut all of his money, he's going to keep trying to do it, but you get rid of the car and you give him a tricycle, you only give him a 1 bullet for his gun, and you give him 2 employees, what's he going to be able to eradicate? Also sounds like we need all of our parts of our machine working to just run our infrastructure in our county. All these positions that aren't filled, if we just trash them, it's like trashing moving parts to the machine. The machine's going to fall apart. Positions need to be filled. Our sheriff's staff needs to be filled. Murphy's, it's growing. Everything that we do in that town exponentially grows every year. We need enforcement for the alcohol. I'm tired of hopping off the side of the highway, walking home, because I'm going to get hit by a drunk driver after 10 o'clock. I like that we see people, trying to keep things in order in Murphy's, but sometimes it comes down to a couple elderly constables that we've got running the show, and after 9 p.m. when everyone's been drinking all day, that's when the problems start, and we need enforcement. Our sheriff needs officers. If we cannot get them any other way but to regulate, that's the direction we need to go. We cannot cut our jobs. We can't lose more people. It's falling apart. I mean, sidewalks, law enforcement, education, all these things can be earmarked. So, no, I got 17 seconds. It's rude.
Excuse me,
That's all
sir.
I have to say. But
Excuse me, sir. I'm going to give you your time back. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a timer right here. It's being controlled electronically and visually. I don't need to be reminded if it's time. I've got that part handled. Thank you. Give him back his time, please.
17 seconds is when as I've said, I grew up here, guys. I keep hearing these things thrown out, that these are problems being created by an ordinance. You guys created that ordinance. The guys came out of the woods. They came out of the woodwork. They're going to go right back into the woods again. We're going to lose the good ones, and we're going to have our forests filled with people.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Tofinelli, I'm one of your constituents. We spoke last week. My name's Anna Stepp. I'm the owner of Frog Farm, but I'm a lot more than a grower. I'm a retired Air Force vet, okay? Honor, integrity, and service before self. I served 30 years, okay? 30. Not all of them consecutively. Sometimes I had a break in service because I went from being enlisted to an officer. I needed time to go to school, so I had a break in service. The creed of the Air Force is, I'm an American airman. My mission is to fly, fight, and win. I'm faithful to a proud heritage, a tradition of honor, and a legacy of valor. I'm an American airman, guardian of freedom and justice, my nation's sword and shield, its sentry and avenger. Now, I'm bringing this up because I work with a lot of vets. I've been a nurse for 30 years as well. I've deployed our soldiers, our airmen, our fighters, and I've made sure that everything was dotted and crossed on every piece of paper that went across my desk. As the chief nurse of a rescue wing here in California, I wrote regulations. When you write regulations, at least as far as when it affects people's health, you have to pull in subject matter experts. Subject matter experts such as our sheriff, such as Barbara Kalin, who I heard speak earlier, even this company that did this EIR. I read that. I don't exactly agree with it because on my farm I have no rodenticides. I have no insecticides. I have nothing that will kill anything other than, I don't have anything that kills anything actually, now that I think about it. The planning department made 2 recommendations, one for ban and the other for regulation. I expect as a citizen of Calaveras County to see both addressed equally, okay? I understand that there's a lot of passion on both sides. For people that want the ban, they see one side, we see another. There's compromise there. I believe that if we all sat down and used common sense, the issue of money wouldn't be an issue because we're gonna figure something out. The issue of not having grows in our backyard, we can work on things like that. Banning isn't going to change anything right now. What's going to happen with the ban is it delays what is going to be inevitable, and that we've seen across the country in every state that has passed regulation. We're seeing a lot of progress there. I would like to see this county continue that progress. Okay. One thing I had a lot more to say, but in closing, I just want to say closed lines are like faulty parachutes. They refuse to open.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name's Adrian Lambie. I'm an attorney with the law firm Archer Norris, and I work in my firm's regulatory compliance and litigation practice groups. We advise and represent regulated industries throughout this state, including many businesses here in Calaveras County. As such, we've made a careful study of the ordinances currently pending before this board. Our findings are set forth in written comments previously submitted for your consideration. The short version is that a ban ordinance would be a fiscal, economic, and demographic catastrophe for this county, not to mention the extensive legal repercussions which inevitably would follow. Most importantly, it's a catastrophe that need not and should not occur. Throughout the state and across this region, jurisdictions are coming to the realization that effective, common-sense cannabis regulation is not only an economic boon for their citizens, it is the most effective tool in regulating and eradicating black market cultivation operations, and we've seen that here in this county, and we've heard it from our sheriff today. So, across the region, we see cities and counties either currently regulating or instructing their staffs to prepare common sense cannabis regulations. San Joaquin County, the city of Sacramento, Nevada County, the city of Stockton, Stanislaus County, Yolo County, the city of Patterson, the city of Colusa, Plumas County, the city of Walnut Creek. The jurisdictions are far too numerous to list in this 3-minute comment period. Suffice to say that a vote in favor of a ban today is a vote on the wrong side of history. This is your legacy at stake. Today is about how this board will be remembered 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I grew up right up the hill in West Point. I graduated from Calaveras High School right down the street. When I moved back to this county to raise my children here, I hope that I can tell them I was there the day that Supervisor Clapp looked beyond campaign promises and voted for the greater good. I was there the day Supervisor Mills made the most difficult decision of his lengthy career in public service, and he chose a promising future rather than a return to the past. I was there the day Gary Tofinelli cast the vote that saved the economy of this county. I hope today is that day, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jason Hauer. I'm a local business owner and District 3 voter. My company's employed dozens of local families and will be severely impacted by the removal of our largest industry. When I voice my support for the cannabis industry, often I'm met with, the only reason he wants it is because he stands to make money. As if I should be ashamed of being an entrepreneur, as if I should be ashamed of wanting to build a successful business here in Calaveras and provide jobs. Of course, this is just one of many absurd arguments I've heard. People claiming that cannabis is not agriculture, that it's driving property values down and tourism numbers down, despite clear evidence to the contrary. I've seen Tea Party Republicans hanging signs calling for stricter environmental regulations as if they're card-carrying members of the Sierra Club. Their arguments are disingenuous, and we see through them. I've heard about the guns and the pit bulls, the threats and intimidations, etc. These things have nothing to do with regulated farms. We are corporations. We have accountants and lawyers. We have W-2 employees. We protect our inventory with insurance and security, just like any other business. We want the illegal growers out of here just as bad as everyone else. Fact denying will get us nowhere, gentlemen. It's time for our leaders to lead. Work out a compromise that protects our neighborhoods and doesn't completely devastate hundreds of local businesses and thousands of employees. Today, I'm sure you're going to hear about the children and our road safety, etc. Marijuana is a gateway drug. Whether you believe these claims or not, it is irrelevant. We are working on a land use ordinance. Marijuana is now legal in California. We're going to be able to drive to Stockton, purchase marijuana, bring it back to Calaveras, and consume it. It will have no impact on all of these things. In closing, I just want to remind you that we are an industry. We provide jobs. A job is the foundation of our society. Removing of the foundation of anything, and the results will be obvious. A ban is a job killer, a foundation killer. I haven't heard an objection that cannot be addressed via regulations. Don't want it in the neighborhoods? Get it out of the neighborhoods. Prohibition is not the answer. Our issues are easily fixed. When you go to the dentist because of a toothache, the dentist doesn't chop your head off to fix the issue. Deal with the toothache, leaders, so we can all go back to being a unified and prosperous Calaveras.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Rick Frimmer. I have property in Mountain Ranch, District 2. I have a background in economics. I have a degree from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also an attorney, and I specialize in municipal bankruptcy. I barely have 3 minutes to get this out, so I'm going to do it in bullet points. I have a longer presentation, which I'll hand up, which you can read at your leisure. I hope you do. You know, for the last 16 months, you've been debating about the environment. And yes, it was legally required to do that under CEQA. But it's only one of a number of issues that you have to deal with here. And the larger one, the gorilla in the room that nobody seems to be talking about except perhaps two of the last speakers, is the economy. So my presentation that you can read later, all of these, everything that I'm about to say are taken from public facts. So let's just look at the underlying facts, folks. Calaveras County is a factory town. You don't think of it that way, but it is. This is a $650 million economy, and cannabis is $350 million of it. That's over 50%. It's no different than Detroit, and it's no different than Las Vegas. What happens when you close the factory? I'm sure you've all heard of all the factories that close in the Midwest. You know what happens to the towns? They go bust. And in 3 to 5 years, this county could be bankrupt. I'm in every municipal bankruptcy in the country. I've been in Detroit, I'm in Puerto Rico, Stockton, San Bernardino. I know it when I see it. Now, I'm not saying it's definite that it's going to happen, but let's face it. The urgency ordinance has already put a stake in the economy here, and any further ban or even the alternative regulation that the planning department came up with is likely to put the final nail in the coffin. How do you replace a $350 million industry? It's never been done before. I want to take a look at Detroit for 1 second. Detroit, in 1959, had the highest per capita income of any city in the world. In 2014, I spent 18 months in the bankruptcy court. It'll never recover. They didn't protect their industry. They didn't diversify. Some people think you can run an economy on retirees. That's why Puerto Rico's in bankruptcy. All of the young people have left to get jobs on the mainland, leaving the elderly behind. Unfortunately, they just don't provide any economic benefit. They don't use much services, but they don't run businesses and hire people. So look, I could take any industry, auto repair, for example. Why don't we ban auto repair in gas stations? I don't even have to write that environmental report. I can tell you right now that the environment will be safer. It's not really the answer. My takeaway is this. I implore you, before you go any further with this, commission a county-sponsored economic impact report. You need to know what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And this goes beyond Rebecca Callen and the current budget. Do it. 45,000 people are counting on it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Powell. I'm here on behalf of my client, Rolling Hills Bookkeeping, LLC. I'm an attorney at Mitchell Chadwick, specializing in CEQA and environmental primarily. I've worked in 30-plus counties from Imperial all the way up to Siskiyou and everywhere in between on CEQA and NEPA and other environmental projects. So we've submitted several letters to the county pointing out what we believe are serious flaws with the draft EIR and the final EIR. My technical comments are on record and my speaking time's limited, of course, so I'll just give you a quick overview of our issues with this EIR. Primarily, the county asked Ascent to draft an EIR analyzing the impacts of regulation, not a ban. The ban was included as an alternative, but the analysis was so short and superficial, it was basically a throwaway alternative. And I look at EIRs all the time. Often for a single project, not a countywide ban like this, but a single project, they'll take up half a bookshelf. In this case, when I got it, I was looking at it and I thought, that's it? Oh, okay, let's look at that. And I read the alternative section, and it was just a couple pages, and it was clear to me, well, they were not given the directive that this might be an actual alternative. So I bet Ascent was shocked when they found out that the board was seriously considering that alternative. Now the county has asked Ascent to draft the final EIR to do something it was never meant to do, analyze the impacts of a ban thoroughly. If that was the original purpose of this EIR, it would have had a very different methodology. It would have looked at baseline data for illegal grows, habitat resources for those grows. It would have looked at pesticide use. How effective would enforcement be? And where would the funding come for enforcement? We don't actually know the impacts of the ban because this reconfigured final EIR did not collect the necessary baseline data to do so. When we commented previously that the EIR doesn't analyze the potential for greater numbers of illegal grows under a ban, along with the greater environmental damage such as pesticide use, illegal water diversion, and habitat destruction, fire risk, for example, Ascent replied that non-compliance was speculative and then they can just assume that full compliance will occur. Seriously, that's speculative? It is not speculative to assume that the illegal grows that have gone on for years in this county will continue and expand under a ban, causing far, far more environmental harm than closely regulated grows that are inspected and permitted by local and state agencies. What is speculative is, and more like a fantasy, that the EIR's assumption that the county will cut off its source of funding for enforcement and suddenly all the illegal grows will vanish. That's more than speculative. That is undeniably false. Ascent responded earlier that quantifying the illegal grows under a ban and doing more of a comprehensive baseline analysis was complicated. Difficult. Yes, it is, but that's their job, and it's easy to assume facts that we know are false.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Joyce?
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Galvin. I'm currently president of the Mountain Ranch Community Club. In the year following the fire, I was on the board of Calaveras Recovers and worked every day in the trailer at the park with fire victims from that fire. So I've gotten to know hundreds of our residents over the last 2 years and have been very deeply involved in the well-being of the community. Excuse me. I came forward to speak today because our community is extremely fragile, the whole District 2 area, the fire area. We have been through one tremendous disaster, and we are now on the brink of another, in our view, if the ban gets passed. We already have issues with the side effects of the illegal grows who have come in. Just as one example, I live in Sheep Ranch, and this spring I watched as truckload after truckload after truckload of dirt and piping came right down Sheep Ranch Road and went right out Armstrong Road to set up illegal grows. And that is just mushrooming every year. I can't see how a ban is going to stop the people who don't care now about the law, and if there's no enforcement, then those of us who live there are in really dire straits. Those of us who are heading up the nonprofits and other community activities are working hard together to try to recreate a community where people actually want to live. We're doing the best we can, but with a ban, I'm pretty certain our efforts will be in vain. Many people who live there right now are on the brink of leaving. They're waiting to hear the outcome of what happens with this Board of Supervisors. And if they see that they are at risk, that their community is at risk, that their well-being is at risk, they're going to be gone, along with the legitimate growers who have done their best to be good community members and to help us with the recovery. It's the illegal growers that are the issue. They are not going to provide anything positive for this county or for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Holbert, Mountain Ranch. I want to read into the record a letter that my friend Sheila Gradison in Vallecito wrote yesterday to Dennis Mills. Hello, Dennis. I'm aware that the ban on cannabis is coming up for consideration tomorrow by the Board of Supervisors. I urge you to reconsider your position on that ban. As long-term resident and business owner in this county since 1977, I want to do what I can to let you and the other supervisors know how I feel about the wisdom of appropriate regulation of cannabis farming in our county. That is, neither a ban nor such restrictive regulation that only the few can afford to continue growing. I fear that our poor county is on the verge of bankruptcy, will be bankrupt even quicker. All of the Measure C tax money will go away. As you probably recognize, those funds were applied to balancing the county budget this year. There is no plan at present providing a means of dealing effectively with the dangers of illegal growing. By the end of next year, we may be facing the same challenges as other counties in the state, such as Siskiyou County. Many legitimate farmers who have done their best to comply with the Measure C will be unable to stay in business. For all too many of them, this was their only means of recovering from the Butte Fire's impact on their homes, land, and personal lives. As a healthcare practitioner, I have a particular interest in making sure that medical marijuana and the businesses that dispense those products remain for the continuing benefit of our community. I have many clients who rely on those medicines derived from particular strains of cannabis for pain management. It's a form of healthcare that is supremely important to the quality of their lives. Please take these concerns seriously. Represent those constituents like myself and many others who are wanting the best for our county's citizens, their safety, and Calaveras County's financial security going forward. Thank you, Sheila Gradison.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Bill Wilson, District 1, Vietnam era veteran. Husband to a legal marijuana farmer. I'm a dead man walking. I died 20 years ago from a heart attack. I was saved, brought back. I'm now a bionic man. I got a pacemaker in here. That's the only reason I'm in here today, folks. That's why my name's not on this farm. If I was to die and my own name was on that farm, my wife would have to go through all kinds of hoops. Not only the hoops she's already jumped through to be a legal cannabis farmer in this county. We came up here 7 years ago after her father died of pancreatic and esophageal cancer. You have all heard that before. I gave you all a piece of paper earlier, and those are the little data I crunched over the weekend. Those are the denial letters. 196 people were denied for 408 reasons. Out of those 408 reasons, 22 were they couldn't get a fence up and a dang sign. 22 people. 45 people couldn't get their paperwork in by September 7th. Those papers that were due. The Planning Commission never called them back. They weren't responsible. They weren't supposed to call them back. Obviously, when they went through, they put those papers over here. They put papers that had papers over here. So they never called them back. Now we also have another 45 people that didn't get a BOE permit, didn't get a sales license or a business license, and they didn't do their NOI paperwork. That's 90 people out of 196. That's pretty good. Then we get to the real criminals, the real desperados, those people that did grading without permits after May 10th. Those people that actually put false statements on there. We have a few people in there. Sorry, I gave all those papers away. Should have kept one. We have a few people that didn't pass their background check. We have a few people that lied. But we have a lot of people that did go through the whole process, got their papers in, invested in their farms, put money in their property. Now we come up with ban light. All those properties are either on RA, RR, or U. 186 people, or closer to 500 people, are going to have to move those farms if they stay regulated. They've got to shut down immediately, then they've got 2 years to sell their property. Go out and buy one of the 5 available qualifying properties for sale on the MLS in this county. Talk about a land swap. Talk about real estate agents making money. There's 500 properties go online. They've all got to sell. I can't afford to keep my property if I've got to move my operation or my wife's operation. Sorry, I get confused sometimes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm done.
Good afternoon. My name is Raymond Smith, the lobbying director with Calaveras Normal. I live in Valley Springs. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to this county and your service to others. The presentation by the staff earlier today was very informative. I'd like to thank you as well. I'd like to speak again to the foundation of Republican government, which is popular sovereignty. And what I believe is part of the American dream is voting and having your vote count and having your vote heard. If we are going to look at regulations, we really need to look at the deception that was used in the last year, going back to the parking lots and the street corners when they were gathering the signatures. Whether or not we're going to vote on that deception, or whether or not we're going to allow the people to have a period of time to look at the regulations which they're going to live with and come to a conclusion from their standpoint and not from the standpoint of their elected officials. However, that is the democratic process, so I support that as well. But what we need to think about is if this is in fact just a commercial ordinance, or if this is in fact an ordinance that is affecting both adults for recreational, but also for personal medical use. The State Law 11362.777 was repealed. That was replaced. We do have some a somewhat deception that's been paramount to the support for the ban, and it's mainly around the support for the commercial regulation part of it, and the fact that they don't want any commercial regulation. I'm really supportive of a regulation, a comprehensive regulation, and a regulation that doesn't cut out 80% of the farmers or create a situation where we may not have the funds available for even a regulation. That would effectively be just as bad as a ban. And part of Calaveras' normal work within the last several months is developing this platform. Cannabisregulations.org is where you can go to that and figure out what we're going to be doing with our regulations. It is in no way disrespectful to what the county is doing. It's separate to that, so that the people can actually have something to come to a conclusion on. Because again, as an American citizen, I believe that our right to vote is one of the most important things, and it's really I have a high reverence for it, but I also have a respect for each of every one of you. And again, thank you for your service and commitment to others. Have a beautiful day.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Jed Richardson, Realtor from Mountain Ranch. I'm here to discuss the effects of a ban on property values and property taxes. Last year, according to the budget presentation given in September, property values and taxes were up 8.6%, adding an additional $1.05 million to the general fund. An increase in value and revenue has occurred for the last 3 years, demonstrating that cannabis cultivation has not had a negative effect on the values, but has contributed positively. However, this isn't necessarily true for District 2, which has a 20% decrease in property values and taxes due to the effects of the Butte fire, causing a shortage in revenue for critical District 2 services, such as fire protection, necessitating a special election for ballot measure E next month. A cannabis ban would further exacerbate the situation by further reducing property values in District 2 and countywide. If a ban were enacted, properties used for commercial cannabis production will flood the market, driving down values. This will be on top of the properties burned by the Butte Fire, soon to be placed on the market as owners receive settlements from PG&E. This could all but wipe out the recent countywide increases in assessed value and revenue. On the other hand, regulation of cannabis cultivation will have a positive impact on property values, as taxable improvements are made to cultivation properties, such as constructions of homes and infrastructure in the form of wells, septic systems, irrigation systems, agricultural buildings for drying and storage. These improvements are especially critical at District 2, where burned properties will likely remain undeveloped for many years to come otherwise. While many cultivators in the burn area have started or completed construction of their homes, others are waiting for the assurance of intelligent regulation. I urge the Board of Supervisors to provide this intelligent regulation for the betterment of the county and its citizens through increased revenue and services, including the critical services of fire protection and law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brock Estes in Valley Springs. You've come to know me as you've come to know almost everyone in this room. We show up every couple of weeks. The people you don't see are the 95% of the people who are also your constituents, who are also relying on your vote. They don't have a dog in the hunt. They don't have an axe to grind. They basically are just leaving it to you. And I submit that if this ends in a 3-2 vote, you will have all failed at your job. You've had a long time to find a way to come to a 5-0 vote. And if you haven't been able to do it yet, you ought to take more time and do it. And I hope one of you will have the courage to abstain and allow that process to go forward, because a 3-2 vote is not a good vote. Now, I live on Laurent Lane, which runs from Silver Rapids to Huckleberry. Harper Street comes off at halfway down. There are 19 houses on those two streets. Is there anyone here from one of those 19 houses? No, only me. There are about 30 voters in those houses. So you've heard from me, less than 5% of the people who will be affected by this. Now, I did have a chance this morning to get a few minutes of FaceTime with Lori Ajax, who's the czar, the cannabis czar. And she steered me to one of the BCC lawyers, whose name is Sarah Gardner. And I outlined a third way, replicating what's been done in Montgomery County, Maryland. And Lori Ajax was favorable to it, but of course, she wants us in. They want us not to ban. But she said it would be a very difficult road because the statute, as constructed, did not anticipate that county might be an entity that applied for a license, as is done with alcohol in Montgomery County. You can only buy liquor at a county store in Montgomery, even though the state of Maryland does not do that. So the county of Montgomery had to get that bill carried. We would have to get a bill carried that amended the licensing restrictions, changed from an individual to also include an entity. But I believe that if we were able to create a county medical authority and to employ these small growers that we really should care about at decent wages, as Montgomery County does. They have 300 employees. They put $30 million in the general fund each year. They have 21 county liquor stores. I believe that we could do something like that. It's thinking outside the box, but we have a very divided 3-2 vote. And frankly, I don't think there's a mandate that some of the band people think there is. For instance, I supported Clyde Clapp. I gathered signatures for the recall, but the fact is, more people voted not to recall Steve Kearney than voted for Clyde Clapp. Now, it's true that all the band people voted for him, but that's not a mandate.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Allison Char-Smith. I live in Sheep Ranch, and I'm also the board president for the Mountain Ranch Resource Center and Youth Alliance. And I come to you as not only as resident of D2, but also as kind of imploring for your help. Myself, such as Susan Galvin of the community club, are faced with daily of dealing with the people in our community that have been affected by Butte. And so we feel that with AT&T, PG&E, and what the county has sort of left us abandoned. We're also the county that has more than 70% of all say, registered or legal grows, but also there's a very large percentage in our in our district that are illegal grows. And as Susan mentioned about Hubbard, as Armstrong Road, I live down Armstrong Road. And my property last year, when we first enacted the original ordinance, was that I had 3 registered grows next to me. They were all, this year we have 11 that are unregistered, large grows, clear cutting, taking from the O'Neill Creek. So I'm asking you as a resident of District 2, I'm asking you for the citizens of the District 2 that need your help to take the courage to vote and vote for regulation, because a ban is not the way to go. We are in dire need and we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Mark Moore with District 4. I'm a retired fire captain, and I only identify that just to show you that it takes all kinds. I am not a grower, nor do I intend to ever be one, but this issue affects us all in one way or another. And though I believe in majority rule, it is nevertheless extremely important and necessary that those common wishes be developed, nurtured, and supported by facts and reasonable deduction, and not by misinformation, misconceptions, and unreasonable and unrealistic opinions. Cannabis is legal in this state, and that's the way it is. Medical cannabis in particular has been clinically proven and accepted to be a valid and valuable remedy for a long list of illnesses. It has been with us since the beginning of recorded time. It is not a fad, and it will not go away. Therefore, the best approach to the subject, I believe, is to learn the truth about it before formulating one's opinion. And here's a fact. The county is once again in dire financial straits. Last I checked, the latest annual budget accepted by this board would have been much worse if not for an 11th hour bailout on several levels, including a free up of millions of taxpayer dollars that were collected from legal pot growers. If the board approves a ban on legal cannabis cultivation and in doing so eliminates the lucrative tax base brought in by the legal growers, what is our deficit going to look like next year and the years beyond that? It's not going to be good. Regulation obviously is the answer, and it should be extremely comprehensive regulation in my view. Where, how, and even why a particular grower conducts his or her business should be ascertained and controlled to the satisfaction of reasonable statute. It should not be overlooked that other counties near us, surrounding us, have embraced the opportunity and are using the cannabis cultivation revenue windfall to their ultimate benefit, to improve basic services and to eliminate deficit. They are figuring out how to make it work for their communities. But this board, to me, does not appear to want to do the sometimes hard work that it takes to get through the muck and reach the pot of gold. It should also be of interest that Angels Camp, the one and only incorporated town in our county, who had previously banned cannabis cultivation within their city limits, has now quickly changed their tune and is in the process of reversing that decision. One final note, if you proceed with a ban, I will not be surprised if other towns in our county file for incorporation to gain as much sovereignty as possible away from the rule of the Board of Supervisors and carve out their own future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, Honorable Chairman. Joan Wilson, District 1. This is more than a cannabis issue. The land use issue, the rights of landowners telling, some people telling other people how they can use their land or not use their land. It's a healthcare issue, it's an environmental issue, it's a small business issue. This is about people that want to be a part of the pursuit of happiness, leading their own lives and being responsible community members. Some are rich, some are poor. This is about a proud county and proud people. You had time to ban. You could have done that the minute you got into office, but you didn't. Instead, you took an EIR that was meant for regulation and redirected it for a ban. You could have been working on the ordinance that was already in place to make it better, rather than going out and reinventing the wheel. This is about community. It's about families. The results of banning an industry that has already been allowed to operate would be devastating, tearing families and community apart. Children have formed friendships in schools, having to move and leave their friends, leaving their cousins, their aunts, uncles, losing their grandparents, teachers, and clubs, grandparents losing their grandchildren, generations torn apart, communities ripped to pieces, dreams shattered, money lost, ending in poverty, despair. These are the scenes that would be painted by our Board of Supervisors here today if you ban an agricultural industry that has jumped through all kinds of hoops and endured financial hardships to be here. Asking people that are disabled to move in order to grow outside. If you ban, then let's go all the way. To protect our children, to protect our families. To many kids, there are many kids that are drinking underage, so if you have fear about cannabis and youth and are going to ban it because you are against it being used recreationally, then finish the job and ban it all. Alcohol and all that is only used recreationally. It is destructive to our society. And in conclusion, if you're going to ban cannabis, at least ban it all. Let's be healthy and clean. I am an organic farmer. When I started this, I said this is scary, and this is very scary to those children and those families. How are they going to support their families? How are they going to move farms? Thank you
ma'am.
very much, gentlemen.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Couchman. I'm in District 2. We are a registered commercial garden. We've gone through all the steps required to become a compliant registered site. We have done everything we need to do to make sure that our garden is safe and secure. We believe in medical cannabis. We have personal experience with this, what this plant can do. And I sent you an email earlier this week with more of the details of our situation. I agree that cannabis cultivation needs to be monitored and controlled. It has been in the county for a very long time, and there are people that have grown cannabis for many years. For those of us who did everything required and invested a lot of money to comply with all the requirements, it doesn't make sense to me that you'd be willing to send this county into a terrible financial situation. The lawsuits that could happen will bankrupt this county. Do you really think that is something that is good for this community? Wouldn't it be more sensible to sit down with the farmers in the community and work together to address the concerns, to make sure that safety and security are priority, and work to make sure that you have the funds to control it and know what is happening in the county? There is a way. Cooperation is the key. Your own financial person stated on a television broadcast that it was going to be a financial disaster if a ban was enacted, that there were going to be all kinds of unanticipated financial issues, including PERS and personnel funding issues. Please listen to and consider what your staff is saying. The litigation that will ensue is going to be a disaster for everyone and not a legacy that you will be able to be proud of. My partners and I have worked very hard to build a business that we can be proud of, and I have met a lot of registered farmers in this county who are amazing people. The revenue that will be collected will keep this county financially solvent. An attempt at a ban is going to destroy it. Is that what you want? Do you not have the power and wisdom of discernment in your soul? I pray that you have the wisdom and insight to make the right decision, that you can understand that you don't have to personally agree with the cannabis issue in order to agree to acknowledge the history of cannabis in this county and the need to regulate and control it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Board. Sandy Mitra, Mountain Ranch, D2, full-time resident. I'm here today to restate some of the portions of my public comment from last week to ensure my entire message is more broadly heard. As the lone non-cultivator, non-county employee involved in crafting the urgency ordinance, or UO, I'd like to see the work begun there put towards the development of a permanent form of regulation. Where the county has significantly failed its constituents is in not continuing the regulation dialogue using valuable information gleaned from the current program. One glaring gap involves the analysis to ensure costs of the UO are recovered and set appropriately going forward as required under 17.95.250.d. This was to be completed within a year, yet it apparently sits on the CAO's desk as an administrative draft. Draft by definition means a preliminary version of a piece of writing. While this means the county has failed to meet the one-year deadline stipulated in the UO, there is useful data that could be mined from there. No one disputes there are opportunities brought to light via the urgency ordinance for improved regulation. Few can ignore the monetary contributions made by the county budget this year by registered cultivators, and several folks have spoke to those today. Likewise, we must also consider factors recently brought to light by Gary Stevens via the pine tree. Most importantly, no one can ignore the financial devastation looming before this county should this revenue stream become non-existent. My property tax bills for 4 parcels of land in Mountain Ranch represent $7,000 in tax revenue. Should you, as a collective board, proceed with a ban over more restrictive yet permissive regulation, I will take that to mean you find little value in a consistent revenue stream or an enforceable ordinance. As a result, I'm changing my habits relative to paying those in a manner that I hope others might perhaps embrace. I'll no longer pay my property taxes in full prior to the due date. I will pay them twice a year in person. I will also do it before there is a late fee levied. In closing, let me remind you of the Sons of Liberty from Boston, Massachusetts, and their actions on December 16, 1773, with the following statement: no taxation without representation. Do the work, but more importantly, do the right thing using available data, no emotion when it comes to regulation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Next speaker. Mr. Segala.
Good afternoon. I belong to several organizations that I'm active with, taxpayers and the Association of Realtors, and I'm not authorized to represent them at all, and so these are my opinions only. And it seems like there's some good news that's been happening, and some things are working, but they're not mentioned very much. We have an existing urgency ordinance, which was kind of intended to be a ban or quasi-ban, but it established regulations, and under those regulations, certain things were discovered. Those people that were registered didn't have any problems with the environment. There were no environmental concerns, according to our agricultural commissioner, who inspected those sites. Also, crime practically disappeared, according to the sheriff. So we find that regulation can work. That hasn't been discussed so far. We've been doing something right. We can improve on that. There's a really famous man in our county named Barton Stevenow. I never realized how great that man is and was. He died recently. Barton approached regulation by identifying the problems that neighbors were having, how the public was having, and then setting up a process or a regulation that would address those concerns. His foresight on that, combined with treating cannabis as a land use, seems to be the solution. We have a planning commission, which is, I think, doing a good job, and they've come across with 2 alternatives. One of them being regulation. This seems to make sense. The important thing is not to take this regulation and try to make it into a ban by making it so impossible for people to farm that they just can't do it. You got to be careful about that. Also, we may not always have high prices of cannabis. I understand there's some last year's crop can't be sold at the present prices, which means there could be price reductions that would hurt the growers. The free market economy really works. The biggest, I don't have enough time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, honorable supervisors, county staff, sheriff. My name is Jack Norton. I'm a Calaveras resident and a registered farmer in District 1. I'm also co-leader of the Calaveras County Stakeholders Group. I realize that not everybody in this room, and certainly not everybody in this county has
Sir,
had...
I'm going to ask you to speak to the microphone.
Yes, sir.
Because the folks can't hear it out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Not everybody in this room and not everybody in this county has had an open dialogue with legal cannabis farmers, so I'd just like to extend an invitation to anybody that would like to take the chance to do that. Feel free to contact me if you see me around town or here at the meeting. I'd be happy to speak with you. And actually, let me take a second just to start that dialogue with whoever might be interested by saying a few things about myself. I'm a former Boy Scout. I'm the son and grandson of farmers, and I came here to Calaveras County to farm and be a part of the new legal cannabis industry. But that's not the only reason I came here. I also came here for the Calaveras way of life as well. I deeply appreciate my neighbors who treat me like family and the locals who have welcomed me with open arms. I love the natural resources here. The Golden Hills here in District 1, the McCollum, the Calaveras, the Stanislaus Rivers. I'm a member of the Calaveras Historical Society, and I like to tell people that the history here is imminent, as in it's waiting around every corner. I feel it when I walk down the high sidewalks here downtown, or when I visit the assay office behind the old courthouse. It's there when I'm exploring my land and I see the old mines or the grinding stones. I came here to Calaveras to farm, but I stay here to be a part of this history. Now, to some, I may look different or seem like an outsider, but I promise we're more alike than not. I want to be a proud, upstanding member of this county. I want my family to be proud of me. I even brought my father here today. Well, thanks for that time. That's enough about me. What I'd like to do is ask you, board, not to ban commercial cultivation. The regulation proposal presented by the Planning Commission represents many compromises on all sides of the issue. They say something that doesn't make either party happy is a good compromise. The stakeholders group has presented the board and clerk with suggestions that could make the regulations more acceptable for everyone. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Trent Fiorino, District 1. And there's been a lot of talk about how important it is that we get tax money from cannabis to fund our county. But if you read carefully the state law that regulates cannabis, and I believe it's even in our county regulation, it tells us that cannabis is still illegal nationally. In fact, the cultivation and sale of cannabis is considered organized crime under the RICO Act. There's a case going through the courts where a family is suing cannabis farms for the odor under the RICO Act, and it was passed forward by the district courts saying, yes, this is a violation under the RICO Act. It's sad that we're looking at funding our county, funding our police force with money that is illegal under national law, considered organized crime. Is that really where we want to go in this county? Now, I'd say if they legalize it nationally, that's a whole different argument then. But it's still illegal nationally. And the only reason some of these people are not being prosecuted is because right now they're tying up money to allow them to do that. That could change at any day, and things could really begin to change in our county when we see them coming in and beginning to arrest people that are registered. Now, the other thing about regulation that drives me crazy is the fact that we call this regulation, but it's really self-regulation. We sign these people up, tell them they can grow, and then nobody has the time to go back and check on them. So we don't really know what they're doing. We hear that there's no crime on regulated grows, although I know there was a regulated grow near us that were shooting off weapons late at night, and from what I understand, they confiscated a number of illegal weapons on that site. But that doesn't get reported then as being on a registered grow. It's reported as illegal firearms, and so it doesn't show up in the statistics. You know, that's how we're playing games here. We don't need cannabis in this county. I would be one that would step forward and say, if we need to fund our county better, why not raise sales tax in this county? I'd happily pay more in sales tax to take care of our police department, our fire department, and other things. And I would challenge everybody that's in here that's in favor of a ban to stand up and say they'd do the same. I'd pay as much as a penny more on my sales tax in this county if that's what we need. But why don't we look at other funding sources instead of acting like this is the only funding source that's available to us? And the other thing is that statistics say that 70% of the black market cannabis comes from California. There was just another bust of somebody that was trying to sell cannabis from this county in another state. Just happened again. So is that really what we want to do, is support the black market? That's what we're doing. We need this ban. We're asking you to vote for the ban.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Jessica Clofine. I'm from Valley Springs, voting voting member. I'm also a legal compliant cultivator. We've talked a lot about a ban, and I think we've heard a lot of points as well that say we won't always be able to eliminate everything. We won't always be able to eliminate everyone not complying. They will always be there. So how do we improve? How do we support the ones who are following the rules, the ones who are helping the other industries other than cannabis? I think it was a really good point that how many other industries and people will be affected by this. You know, like the sheriff had mentioned, it's a lot of people that help the sheriff department. We watch our neighbors and we watch our neighborhoods and we speak to each other, whether you're for cannabis or not, that's needed. So by supporting compliant cultivators and supporting the all agreed efforts of protecting our environment and protecting our neighbors and supporting our county, that there helps prevent the ones who are not complying and the ones causing the majority of the problems. For regulation, I agree that the more strict we make the regulation, the less good farmers we have around. If we restrict the regulation so much to where, say, 90% of the farmers are not allowed, that includes the majority of the compliant, safe, cooperating farms that are really making the majority of that Measure C tax that's being brought in. Even if we do regulate it too strictly, that really affects that Measure C tax, which affects everything. The location, you know, I come from an agricultural family, tobacco farmers, and so land use is important. I teach my kids that I want to live off my land and to be as sustainable as possible. So if rural agricultural, or example, were to be eliminated, you know, I see my neighbors are wine, you know, I have a vineyard right next to me and a cattle right next to me. Then if I'm told that my area I'm not allowed to cultivate cannabis, it seems to be against the purpose of the rural agricultural means, which is to grow agriculture and to grow business, not to halt it. Moving farms could then pose a large risk as far as compliance. If they're able to bring the one farm in the one location into compliance and follow, and then they're forced to get up and move, the chances of them being fully compliant or possibly, you know, is much harder. Wow, that time goes by fast. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Board. Bill Patron, District 3 resident, and also Regional Director for SEIU 10-1. The union is concerned that if the board votes to ban rather than regulate, our members, your employees, will bear the consequences. Our members, your employees, have not seen a wage increase in over 2 years. Despite the additional recently hired employees into the bargaining unit, the unit still realized a decrease of overall numbers during the last pay period. How could that happen? The county still does not and cannot pay enough to keep quality employees. A ban kills off the revenue stream that would enable the county to provide competitive wages and benefits to keep local residents working here. Our members, your employees, asked Supervisor Toffanelli to explain to us where the replacement revenue would come from, but he declined to answer our members, his employees. The county is currently using Measure C funds to balance the budget. What happens when you choose to get rid of those funds? I think we heard a little bit of that earlier. We fear loss of jobs through layoffs, loss of services through budget cuts, an additional strain on social services that will be woefully understaffed. Our members, your employees, struggle on a weekly basis, making hard decisions on how to meet life's challenges. Your decision today could add to that struggle. Your decision today could not only impact the lives of county employees, but those of the families of cultivators who face the same struggles as everyone else, trying to raise families, provide for their children, or perhaps even providing for their aging parents. A vote to ban sends a message to your employees and to the community that you do not support working families, but support the agenda of a few who wish to see no prosperity in Calaveras County. Not only will the county be throwing away roughly $15 million in taxes and fees per year, the county will also be throwing away any chance of Prop 64 monies that would be earmarked for prevention and law enforcement programs. Earlier it was talked about maybe alternative revenue streams, and perhaps maybe we should think about taxing the churches who decide to get politically active. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, if you intend to speak to give the board and the meeting some indication, I'm going to request that you stand by the doors, but limit that to no more than 5 people. Ma'am, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Are you ready?
Hi, my name is Ann Hill, District 2, and I live in McCollumney Hill. I say ban the pot. In the ordinance 17.95, there's a section that says about organic growing, but there are no standards written that explain what organic growing is, and there's a wide variety even in the cereal industry. I say ban dispensaries because there are also many loopholes that are detrimental to the public safety. The A1 area, the ag area, I have asked people in my area, and I haven't found anyone who says that they want growing in their neighborhood. Nobody wants it growing in their neighborhood. So for those of us that chose to live in a less populated area, and we don't want the pot growing in our area just because we chose to live not where we have another house 10 feet from ours. So it's not fair to us either. So my vote on this issue should count just as much as the next person's in our county, and I don't want it, not in my neighborhood. The water. Calaveras County is the water source for drinking water for the valley and much of California. So what's going to happen when California is sued down the road for contaminated water, and where are we going to get the money to pay for the lawsuits when we have contaminated people all over the state with our dirty water. On the EIR, what I heard earlier, something to the effect of if a grower uses 10% of the water usage and they have to back off and not use some, well, who's the water patrol monitor who's going to monitor how much water somebody can use, and what is the beginning level of the water, and then what is 10% of that, and what is backing off mean? This is crazy. So that's dumb. So for 2 years, the majority of the people in this county have asked for a ban, and we're still waiting. I hear over and over, these people want to grow, they want to grow, they want to grow. Great! Let them grow potatoes, carrots, onions, celery. Everybody would benefit from that, and nobody would care. And there wouldn't be any thieving or anything else. Let them grow good product instead of crappy product, which is also federally illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have one more speaker, then we'll be taking a break. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Vicki
Thank you.
Reinke, Angels Camp. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit direct to today's agenda and to the ordinance before us, 1795. When I read the agenda, I read, conduct a public hearing, rescinding Chapter 1794 and replacing with new Chapter 1795, banning or regulating cannabis. Where in the world did this regulating cannabis come from? We've been talking about this for 2 years. And I was here the day that this board asked the county to put in a ban ordinance. And we thought we would see it around March or April. And today is finally here. But they're still talking about regulating. Nobody has, I hate to say this, but sometimes I wonder who's in charge here. Because I heard you say to do a ban, and now here we are again talking about regulation. There's something wrong with this. And as you all know, we have tried as citizens to put this on a ballot so that we could all, because a lot of people will not come here. They will not go out in the public about this issue because they're afraid. And they wanted to vote on this. Our vote was taken away from the people, and somebody mentioned earlier how wonderful it is to be able to vote. We believe that too, and that's why we tried to put this on a ballot, and every time we were sabotaged by the big marijuana lawyers. I don't know how else to word that, but we're the people. We don't have big lawyers. We don't have a lot of money. We have you. We elect you to take care of us and our county, and I talk to a lot of people who have lived here for generations. They don't want it here. They like the communities that they have. It's going to change the whole character of this community, and we don't want that to happen here. So that was one thing that was a bit of a surprise, and here we are today spending hours and hours and hours talking about regulation, when today we were supposed to talk about a ban. So I wanted that.
That's the planning commission's recommendation.
Mr. Fry.
Sorry.
Please, let
can
her
I
have
have
her
my
3 minutes. Give
I'm
her back
sorry.
5 seconds.
Thank you.
sir.
So anyway, that's part of the thing, and you guys all know this. You know the whole story. So the other thing in the ordinance itself, I think it needs to be included is the microbusiness as a banned activity. A microbusiness came in on Prop 64, and if you read the definition of a microbusiness, it's a scary thing. It's saying you can cultivate, you can manufacture, and you can sell it right there in your little property. And we don't want that here, obviously. We don't want commercial cultivation of marijuana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a 10-minute break right now. We'll resume at... Ladies and gentlemen, that was a 10-minute break. We want to get out of here before midnight. I have one question. Is Mr. Patron still present? I don't know if he is or if he's in the hallway. Okay. Not a problem then. There he is. Mr. Patron, I have a quick question. You were speaking as a member of SICU, for SICU, or as an individual citizen?
Well, it's SEIU, and I was speaking as SEIU.
All right,
On
thank you,
behalf of
sir.
our members.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, we couldn't start without coffee. She had a note.
Called it in. Liquid code 3.
Yeah. Maybe 5.
Thanks, council.
I might hold it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we can be seated and get started. Okay, we had speakers lined up at the door. The next speaker, please.
My name is Margaret Cornell, and I'm in Supervisor Garamendi's district. How did all of this mess start? It started after the fire, when suddenly people couldn't keep their property anymore because they didn't have enough insurance and they couldn't afford to build. So their property went cheap. And who was it that came and bought it? Was it local people? You know who it was. And then we had a big problem. Everybody wanted to buy property to raise cannabis. And they did. And now we're in a big mess. And most of what I heard here is what they came for, money. Everybody is talking about the money. What about the effect that cannabis, marijuana, has on the human body? One person talking about Colorado mentioned how young some of the children were dying from it. Why? Because their parents smoked it? Do we know that cigarette smoke is bad for people? Of course we do. So now it's up to you. Are you going to go for the money, or are you going to figure out a way that we can solve this problem without killing the children? Our children are important. I don't belong to any special organization. I'm a mom. I have 6 children, 20 grandchildren, 32 great-grandchildren. I care about every single one of them. I go through their names every night when I pray, because we live in such a upset world right now. In California, we lead the country in not good things. Our state voted for recreational marijuana. What were we thinking of? Money? Yes. It was against the federal government, so California is against the government. We all know that. We're ignoring it. Wake up, people. Our country is in trouble. Our state is in trouble. Think of the children. Think about your children, your grandchildren. They're important. They will grow up. Some of them won't go the way you want them to. They'll stray for a while like mine did, but they have come back. Train them. Teach them what is right. It isn't the money that's going to make them decent people. It's what you teach them, the principles of what is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll buy that with the clapping. Excuse me. I'm I'm sorry, what? I've just been informed that in Murphy's, there is an evacuation going on right now due to a gas leak on Main Street. I don't know the extent of the evacuation nor any further details. Once I be appraised of that, I'll report out and let everybody know. Okay? Mr. Foley.
Yes, my name's Ken Foley. I'm an attorney here. I've been on all sides of this issue over the last umpteen years. And I have to tell you, I've switched positions multiple times over this time period. The biggest fear that I saw to the county was the increase in crime and deaths that occurred with the advent of the licenses under the emergency ordinance. Now, I was just thinking, when was the last time we had a reported incident? And it seems like things have calmed down somewhat. The problem I see is, what is it, in 2016, this county told people, come here, pay us $5,000 and be legal, and we'll let you grow marijuana. It's only a year later, and we're thinking about doing a ban. The same county is thinking of doing a ban on marijuana that a year ago induced people to give them their money and participate in what was supposed to be an organized legal effort to grow marijuana. I just wanted to tell you that I think the solution to whatever direction you go in really is in the sheriff's hands. Because I believe if the sheriff believes, with assistance and financial aid, he can control the county and do the supervision that's necessary, then we don't really have the personal fears that some of us may have had about 2 years ago. So that's all I wanted to say. It's a tough decision, but you know, you keep flip-flopping, and that just creates tremendous instability. And you know, I don't know how the county's going to progress in the future if we do a complete reversal at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Gonzalez. I am the co-owner of Rolling Hills Bookkeeping here in San Andres. I have something to say to each supervisor. So Supervisors Garamendi and Oliveira, I just want to thank you both for your continued candor and the consistent logic behind the very difficult decisions you must make. You have both proven in word and action your genuine care and concern for the betterment and safety of Calaveras, and I applaud you for it. Supervisors Mills and Clapp, I sincerely hope you have both chosen to listen to your staff today, the sheriff included, instead of the loud, backward-thinking voices of a few of your constituents. Supervisor Tofinelli, as you know, I'm a business owner in your district. I look to you for leadership and wise decision-making for the betterment of our county. Your campaign promise was to build our economy through employment and provide a bright future for the citizens of Calaveras. How bright could that future be by shutting out this county's biggest economic boom since the gold rush? Regulations and enforcement of the law is the only way this situation can work. If you vote to ban, you will be shuttering the doors of legal compliant farms, ancillary businesses like mine, and feeding right into the hands of illegal farmers. They want you to ban because they know you won't be able to enforce it. Any hope of eradicating these illegal, unregistered farms lies in taxation of compliant registered growers. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the law of the land than the passing of laws which cannot be enforced. That's a quote from Albert Einstein that you cited on your Facebook page during your campaign, Mr. Tofinelli. I found it very fitting considering where we find ourselves today. If you vote to ban, you will be passing a law that will be impossible to enforce. Those who care enough to abide by it will close, leave, and you will be left with nothing but a ghost town of a retirement community surrounded by gun-toting cartels that you can't afford to shut down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thanks for listening. I'm George Stevens, and I want to state that I'm adamantly opposed to any type of commercial marijuana activity in our county, and these are just a few reasons. First of all, I believe the whole industry in our county is based on an ill-conceived, illegal foundation. The county says last year, or whatever the date of the initial registration was, please demonstrate to us that you are already breaking the law by illegally growing, and we'll allow you to apply for a permit. And the pot growers say, well, we were bad then, but we'll be good now. We'll follow your regulations. I think that's very naive to assume they will. I think perhaps the most compelling reason for the complete ban is the known and unknown environmental impacts to our county, both in the short and long term. I believe it's an environmental time bomb, and also allowing it in residential areas with many of them dependent on wells with poor water tables is unacceptable. And commercial pot should be no exception. The past board violated their own zoning laws by allowing this activity in residential areas. The pot growers continue to many of them refer themselves as stakeholders. They are not stakeholders. They have no claim to assume that since they are here and growing, that they have a claim or a stake to continue. They don't. They did this on the come, knowing full well that this was a temporary ordinance that was further subject to more investigation and finding out about environmental impacts. Past performance is usually the best indicator of future performance. Based on this, the county has demonstrated a woefully inadequate ability to regulate and monitor this greedy industry. A question I'd like to ask staff at your discretion is, how many grows have been re-inspected for compliance since they were issued their permits? By allowing commercial growing in our county, I believe you're gambling with the safety, welfare, and health of both citizens and the environment of Calaveras County. Please vote for the ban.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Next speaker, please.
Oh, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Going down to my garden feeling sad. Well, I'm going down to my garden feeling bad. I'm going down to my garden feeling mad, oh Lord, and I ain't gonna be treated this way. The county wants to stop me from growing pot, 'cause I live on a 5-acre plot. They think I'm able to move, but I'm not, oh Lord, and I ain't gonna be treated this way. It seems like you want to stop the small farms. Well, then Marlboro, Camel, and Walmart would turn on the charms. Their farms would cause so much harm, oh Lord, and we ain't gonna be treated this way. Cannabis is a pretty smelly plant, and it seems that's why some folks start to rant. We try to get them to chill out, but they can't, oh Lord, and we ain't gonna be treated that way. We could be a dairy farm instead, or turkeys or pigs with 5,000 head, or an asphalt plant with fumes that'll go to your head, but we're not, and we ain't gonna be treated this way. 'Cause it's a smell you'll be losing myself, 'cause it's a smell you'll become accustomed to. I once didn't like it, but now I do. It's true. And it's only smelly for 3 months or 2. We ain't gonna be treated this way. Then you say you'll go back to the band. But I'm starting to think that that's all just a sham. 'Cause I don't think that you really can, oh Lord, 'cause you'll bankrupt the county if you do. So let me grow my ganja where it's sunny, and I'll keep on paying taxes and making money. But I'm not gonna move or tear down my garden, honey. I just ain't gonna be treated this way. I wasn't sure if I could make it here, 'cause it's harvest time and my time is pretty dear. Kind of feels like you didn't want us here. Oh Lord, we ain't gonna be treated that way. Now I have to go 'cause I have lots of work to do. And I haven't slept properly in weeks, it's true. 'Cause I'm working hard, just like all of you, oh Lord. And I ain't gonna be treated this way.
Thank you, ma'am. No. Ladies and gentlemen, please be advised that you have only one opportunity to speak on each individual agenda item.
I love the First Amendment. Oh, hi. Are we ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a speaker at the podium. Please show a little respect.
My name is Patty Johnston, and I'm from Murphy's. And first of all, I tip my hat to you, Mr. Garamendi, for understanding the importance of beneficial change in our community and realizing that with proper regulation, we can grow cannabis in Calaveras. Regulation is not a bad thing, but parts of the current proposal need, hang on, I had to fix this, need reevaluating. There are many, such as myself and my family, that live on a rural residential 5-acre parcel. Many of my neighbors are also registered growers. We have all abided by the current regulations and paid our required fees and taxes. A ban on a 5-acre parcel in no way considers the financial investment we have already put into our farms. Moving is not an option. I've lived on my 5 acres for 28 years and raised 4 children here. My husband passed away 10 years ago. I'm 65 and retired, and my cannabis farm is now a big part of my income. We live on our property, have 2 wells, and only use organic products. If you ban many of these mom and pop grows who are on 5 acres and support our community, wait, I didn't say that right. Anyway, we live here, and you will end up with Walmart grows and corporate takeover. Is that what you want? We, the people of our community, are the heartbeat of Calaveras and our wonderful towns. A ban is also unrealistic. If you do this, you will be shocked by the domino effect this will have on Calaveras, on Calaveras financially. Think about that. Those of us that have followed the rules and regulations should be allowed to continue our farms. Please take more time to discuss all options. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk on a second amendment.
You can't speak, sir. You've already had your opportunity. Sir, you've already had your opportunity. You're allowed one opportunity for each agendized item. So, sir, you'll have an opportunity, maybe at the next board meeting, but right now your opportunity is over, okay?
Hi. I still have trucks going up the road, and the food grade barrels are laying down, and then when they start coming back, they have the barrels up, and they have a makeshift top on them. And the sheriff was told us that it's legal, pot is legal, and that wasn't a consideration. But then I smelled one that smelled like propane, and so they were interested in that. So the vision of the general plan is one that is not compatible with the marijuana trade. It is like a monster that has taken over every aspect of Calaveras life. The argument that we need the money is because it is all spent on marijuana, this and marijuana that. It will continue to suck the life out of us and the government employees. Dispensaries and micro businesses should be banned in the ban document. They should not be kept separate. To do so would only encourage more unpermitted growers to trash Calaveras County. This board has been in place for 10 months. You've directed your staff to write up a ban. They have deliberately dragged their feet, hoping your heads would be turned by money, and now the fear of lawsuits. The tail continues to wag the dog. Marijuana is a gateway drug, which, like others, requires more and more to get the same high, which leads to stronger drugs. The DEA goes across state lines, and we are not exempt. If Calaveras doesn't put a stop to elevating a Schedule I drug to governmental addictive fiscal prominence, our county will forever be looking over its shoulders. California does not recognize medical marijuana as opposed to recreational marijuana. The so-called dispensaries will be the pot shops they really are, or joints as they were called in the days of yore. Pot smokers brazenly smoke marijuana in public, even at the government center on their way to their cars. There are permitted grows, which are contiguous with unpermitted grows. There are reports of dispensaries not allowing regulators on their premises. They have been known to sell out the back door. The permitted grows in this county are under-inspected. The dump and transfer stations have been stressed with added activity.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker. Ms. Morris?
Thank you. Dina Morris, Calaveras County. I come here today to beg you, please, no more delays. I was led to believe last year before the urgency ordinance passed that the supervisor of my district and another supervisor were going to help me, and we were looking towards a ban. Actually, there was three supervisors total. But I found out on May 10th, 2016, that wasn't quite the case with two of the three. And I remember specifically telling one of those supervisors that they aren't here today, that regulation would not help the situation in my neighborhood, that it would not get rid of the bad growers. And guess what? As I stand here speaking to you today, they are still in my neighborhood. They still continue to intimidate, harass, and threaten the neighbors. They continue to live in tents and trailers on the properties. They continue to ignore the laws. Traffic going by my house every night, lots of traffic recently, on a little country road that's already tore up badly. What happened was this isn't a bait and switch. It was a temporary ordinance, and everyone knew that. It was temporary, so there's no guarantee. But the problem is that it forced all of your citizens into this situation, into this giant experiment that is experimenting with lives. My family, myself and my husband, we've invested our life savings into our home. So if we are forced to move, we will lose a lot of our property value, simply because it narrows the market down for buyers that want to buy surrounded by commercial marijuana grows. And they're not going to invest in my house. They like to take minimal houses and land. It's all about the land. But anyway, so it's the legal grows that have been causing the problems. Now, I know that the sheriff has recently eradicated 2 illegal grows in my neighborhood. Those guys weren't the problem. They weren't the ones harassing me, intimidating me, and my family and my friends and neighbors. They weren't the ones that trapped my husband and threatened him if you ever come down this public road again, we'll take care of you. And then 1 week later, come running down their driveway with their AR-15s telling my other neighbor, you want to come here?
Thank you.
Please ban.
Don't ask about the bottom of the computer, it's a long story. Good afternoon, Board. Crystal Kesey, District 1 voter and registered farmer. I am one of the scary outsiders who came here to grow regulated cannabis. I have 2 Ivy League undergraduate degrees and a master's degree from a California university. I have 4 children between the ages of 10 and 16. All of them have 4.0 GPAs or higher. I have been a field biologist in the state of California for the last 24 years and have owned my environmental consulting business since 2001. I am co-leader of the Calaveras Cannabis Stakeholders Group. Our neighbors support our operation. We have paid for road improvements and fire prevention where we are located. Our farm grows 100% pesticide-free cannabis that would meet organic standards if there were organic standards for our product. The medicine from my farm has been turned into treatments for ovarian cancer, breast cancer, epilepsy, and for children suffering from the effects of chemotherapy. It is unreasonable to change the rules after the game has already started. If you ban it, our farm will fold because we are law-abiding citizens. We will not stay here if it is not permitted. If you choose to adopt the regulatory recommendations of your planning commission, our farm will be zoned out, even though I have an ag parcel. I'm here to speak for the concept of grandfathering. In order for us to comply with those regulations, even though we own an ag parcel, we'll have to purchase our neighbor's 10 acres, merge the parcels, and move the farm for a 3rd time. This is a difficult but not impossible. We are willing to make the significant additional financial investments so that the cancer patients, PTSD sufferers, epileptics, and children needing chemotherapy relief can continue to benefit from the medicine we grow from them. Please, Honorable Board, vote to allow this educated, entrepreneurial, community volunteering, advocate for the environment, and mother to continue to be the healthy and safe supplier of medicine for those who need it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Brett Gonzalez. I'm the co-owner of Rolling Hills Bookkeeping. I'm wanting to speak to mainly you, Mr. Tofinelli. We're in your district with our business. We currently supply 4 salaries out of your district for our employees, not naming the CPAs that work for us. Last week alone, I had 3 local bookkeepers that were out of work looking for work with us, and I cannot hire them because I'm not going to turn around and lay them off 2 months later if this ban goes through. The money is not just in cannabis, and I'm sorry for anybody that wants to sit back and say, oh, they're here for the money. Yeah, our lives are controlled by money, absolutely. The only reason any of us go to work, open a business, is for the money, because that allows us to take care of our families. Business is what's needed here. There's plenty of other local businesses down the stretch of San Andreas that are too afraid to come out and speak to this because they're worried about how it's going to affect, one of which says he's worried a rock's going to come through his front window, and I believe you spoke with him yesterday. It is not just the cannabis guys that are going to get affected by this. Obviously, yes, they have a lot of money. I know how much money they've spent. But there's a lot of us that have invested plenty of money into this. I've heard a lot of people mention the federal government they're stating that this is an illegal drug. Well, they do say that on Fox 40. However, they turn around, they accept tax dollars from it every day. The amount of 1040 EZ and 3986 vouchers I've cut the last 2 weeks amounts to over hundreds of thousands of dollars going to the IRS. So if it's illegal, they're accepting the dirty pot money. To finish, and I'm sorry, I'm a little shaky right now. I'm still pretty pissed off. Mr. Supervisor, Mills and Clapp, what you guys just showed there was atrocious. You guys were elected into a position to sit and listen to every one of your constituents, whether they are writing you, voicing it, or singing it. Your personal opinion does not matter up there, does it? You're here to do what your constituents ask you to do. I think that spoke a whole lot to you guys' character.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Adam Ray, District 2, longtime Calaveras resident. I'm with the sheriff and I'm a good old Calaveras boy. Grew up here on my father's farm out in Mount Ranch. Been in the family since the 70s, and we just have deep roots here in Calaveras. We were really affected in the Butte fire. Our property we had been working on since I was a little boy, planting trees, and we had a tree farm. And after the Butte fire, you know, our property is now a moonscape. My elderly parents were forced to leave the area because we don't have a single thing left on our property. My family, my young son, my wife, we decided to stay and try to put our property back together. And when the urgency ordinance was put out there, it was an avenue for us to repurpose our land. And we came in, complied. This talk about us not being regulated, I've been inspected. I've had, you know, the sheriff's department, code compliance down on my property, welcomed them in. We've jumped through every hoop. We've cut over $100,000 in tax revenue so far this year to the county, and we just want to play a fair game, and we want a fair shake at it. Feels like changing the game midway is disingenuous and unfair. Being here today and listening to everybody has been, for me, really, really inspiring. I mean, we live in America. We get to listen to people's differing opinions. We may not agree, but when it comes down to it, we're all Americans. We want what's best for our kids. I don't think anyone on either side of this issue wishes harm on kids. That's just not what anybody's out for. We have different opinions. We get to sit in these chambers and we get to listen to different people's perspectives, and we get to look at the facts and make good, clean, educated decisions on what's going to be best for our county. I hope you guys take the time to really look at the facts and take the time to listen to the people that are here talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Susan Morris, District 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll determine that. I don't believe Ms. Morris has spoken. Am I correct? Please
I
proceed.
haven't.
I've already made a decision. She'll be allowed to speak.
I've just been sitting here. I've been to many of these meetings in the last year and a half, 2 years. And I've listened carefully at every meeting, and if I haven't been at the meeting, I've been watching on the video. And I'm really concerned that this community is becoming lawless. People come up here and they say, well, the sheriff can't enforce it, there's not enough people. Well, let me tell you, I don't need to have the sheriff catch me doing something wrong. I need not to do it. And I would hope that all of us in this community would be like that. We don't have to be told by the police officer or the sheriff or anyone that this is against the rules. Don't do it. We should know that. And the other thing is, the reason I walked out of here a few minutes ago is this tribunal here is being allowed to be disrespected. And that's very bothersome to me. And it shouldn't ever happen. And I really mean it. It's not okay to make fun of this hearing. It's not okay. And the only way we can let people know that it's not okay is to not participate in it. So I'm just telling you that there is a whole group of people here that are not lawless. They don't want to be disrespectful to this tribunal here. And they're proud of our community. And they want to be proud of our local government. This is what we have here, and we all ought to stand for it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi.
Hello.
A lot of you probably know what I might say already. I am in Supervisor's Mills District, and I heard somebody talk about the Sons of Liberty, and that actually was one of my great-great-great-grandfathers. So he was friends with Paul Revere, so I kind of know a little bit about liberty and fighting for good causes. I've heard a lot about business today. High risk, high reward, speculative business that a number of people have gotten in. And really, there's never been a business that got into business that had a guarantee that they were going to make it. It's just part of doing business in America. So I find that argument to be not very valid. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the crime in Copperopolis. There's been a lot of water theft. Here's a particular vehicle that on July 21st, stealing water from CCWD. Here's another guy. This guy's pretty famous actually in Copperopolis. July 25th, the sheriff was there. He went up and down with a 500-gallon container of water 5 times that we know of. Here's another guy. This guy we've seen around town 3 times. He probably has a 500-gallon container. I don't know how much he has stolen, but I can tell you something. They pay $10 a month for their water. We pay, what, $185 every 2 months? How is that fair? Who knows if they're stealing that water or not? We don't know. So anyway, also, Foothill Sanitation did give me the okay to talk about this. They were recently broken into. I'm sure the sheriff probably knows that. They went through every truck. They took shovels and rakes and hoses and whatnot. You know the other thing they stole? Water. They stole 150 gallons of water. So Kevin at Foothill goes, gee, I wonder who needs water. So, you know, we can talk about the federal law. You've heard me talk about federal law. There was a resolution from CCRP. We know that it's against federal law. We know that it's the Controlled Substance Acts that does not give medical marijuana any kind of exemption. We know the FDA has it scheduled as a Scheduled I drug. We understand that money laundering is against federal law under U.S. 18, 1957, and 1956. We could be guilty of money laundering in this county. The FDA and the DEA has not approved marijuana as a medicine. It's not approved. This is an experiment. Gentlemen, this is an experiment. Also, there's not a single fertilizer. Well, here we go.
Thank you. Mr. McManus?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, rest of the board. Bill McManus, the band committee. You know, I knew this was going to be a grind of a day, so I was trying to think of ways to try to get through it. Keeping single thoughts to push through and try to reach is kind of pointless. So I thought instead I'd just entertain myself, and there's no lack of ammunition here, to try to identify all the fairy tales that we hear on this subject. The first fairy tale is not everyone is entertained, and dignity is not brought to this chamber with stoner karaoke. That's a fairy tale. Another fairy tale is pot is not medicine, or pot is medicine. We know that's true. We've learned over the years, some of you have been here a long time. We know that it's a fairy tale that farmers grow medicine. They don't. They're here to make money. We've been hearing over and over and over again that regulation works. I don't know what wormhole these people walk through. They are in a different universe. We have seen 3 years of regulation be a complete and total failure. The planning department, in collaboration with county council, has failed to deliver an ordinance that can be enforced. Lots of regulations, pages, none of it enforced. As I have said many times before, regulation without enforcement is chaos. And what this county has had for 2 or 3 years now is pure 100% chaos. When I look at the ordinance that came from County Council and the Planning Commission or Planning Director, it says 1795 is a ban. No, it isn't. It's not a ban. It is a prohibition and a partial ban. You didn't ban dispensaries. The first incarnation had it specifically exempted right on the front page. This one is a little bit more clever. They wait until they get to, oh, it is the first page, .95.010, while retaining the ability of patients to have access to medical cannabis in the county to the extent deemed necessary under state law. There is no state law that requires dispensaries. None. We can go on and on and on again with the fairy tales that are being told, and someone is expected to believe them. Even the EIR, they point out that they took in the financial element on the EIR, that if you ban, it's going to hurt. It's going to run out of money. What they didn't tell you is if you do ban, there's going to be lots of draft money available to you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Gentlemen, Tim McDonald, District 1 voter. I'm a big fan of being an American, being a Californian, being a Calaveras County resident. I stopped watching the NFL this year for one simple reason. They're kneeling for the flag. It's a disrespect for the people who served to that flag, I believe. And I believe when someone is exercising their First Amendment rights and an elected official gets up and shows his backside during that, it's pretty much the same thing. Nice work, gentlemen. Take it easy.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Gina Gonzalez, Angels Camp, Dennis's constituent, very proud. Just to let you guys know what regulation has done for me. My husband's a hunter. Went up one of the roads about 3 weeks ago, was attacked by a legal grows pit bull. We turned it into animal services. Of course, they're overwhelmed. So we ended up having to pull a gun. He's a CCW, he carries a license, and he carries his handgun. And he had a shotgun, could have blown the dog from here to tomorrow, but he didn't. But let me tell you something, it's not a reality that everybody sees. Some people, as you think, Mr. District 2, that it's a wonderful thing, Mr. Oliveira, you think it's gonna bring money to our county. You know what it's gonna bring? More crime. You're in the crime industry, you understand the background, you know exactly how we feel. You have lived it, you have seen the problems with this. You understand what the EIR is telling you, but the EIR was changed a little bit. I don't think that's right, and I don't think that's just. We are asking for a ban for many reasons. We aren't gaining anything in our pocketbooks. We aren't gaining anything property values. I'm never going to leave. But you know what? They have a lot to risk. They can also grow tomatoes. They can grow corn. They can grow hay. They can grow many other things. We don't need that money. What we need is regulation. If it's going to be regulated, it's going to be regulated hard, real hard, which I don't think will work in this county because I don't think anybody here has the job that can handle it. My opinion is to ban it, wait till the federal government steps up and does it right, and then we come after them. Because the federal government is our father. We need to watch what the federal government does, and then we step up to the plate. But until then, we are not ready to open this can of worms that's been opened without our vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Mr. Malby?
Mike Falvey, District 2. Just a number here, not 100% accurate, but I've been keeping track. Ban speakers were 14 in favor of the ban, and let's call them pro-regulation, or not in favor of the ban, were 37. 37-14. So if you represent your constituents, not just in your districts, But overall county, that's a pretty clear mandate. And that's not even taking into consideration what our auditor and sheriff said. I don't know if they realize it or not, but they endorsed regulation, strict regulation. And I, as not one that's tied with the industry, appreciate that. Number two, I just heard the word fairy tale thrown out. A person was accusing members of an industry of living fairy tales. And he also used the word chaos that they have caused. I'll tell you who caused the chaos. The previous board of supervisors is who caused the chaos. So it's incumbent upon you. You can right that wrong. This is your chance. So 37 to 14 is a pretty strong number. Need I say more?
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
I'm number 15, Jennifer Stewart, District 2. I have come to this podium a couple of times, been to a bunch of meetings, listened to everybody, and the stuff that I hear is shades of truth on some points of view that, okay, let's talk about dispensaries. In Sacramento City, it was brought up by the pro-pot side that they have lots of regulation, 31 dispensaries in Sacramento City. They did a surprise audit less than 2 weeks ago, and the press, the KCRA, put out a report about it. The auditors went to 5 out of 6 dispensaries. They were denied access in a lot of those special areas where they wanted to find out if they were following all the regulations, if they were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. They found out they were not. And it just seems to me that if Sacramento City has all the auditors that they could possibly pay for, and we don't, how can we expect to regulate something that is irregulable? These people don't want to be regulated. It's obvious that there are so many grows out there that didn't even take the time to go fill out the paperwork to become legal. So all this has been said before. That's why the band people haven't been getting up here and saying one more time, because you asked us, Mr. Oliveira, if we don't have anything new to say, why? Why come up and talk about it? But we do when it comes to arguing the point that we don't care, we don't have enough support, we don't worry about all the things that they're saying we don't worry about. Like when they say there's no more crime, it must be a reduction in crime. That's not true. Our businesses have been threatened. We know there are certain businesses in town that have been threatened with boycott because they donated money to the ban. And when this particular restaurant owner said, bring it on if you're going to picket me, we are in support of these people that have been here for years. All of our families have been to these restaurants. And now the people that they hire during summer vacation, they're getting paid more under the table to be bud cutters than to bus tables. So do we want an illegal industry, or do we want to take our kids from a point where they're making money on a legal business that they can have it on their resume? You can't put, I was a bud cutter, when you go work for an IT company. But if you go say that, I'm done.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Judy Hurley, Mountain Ranch. Citizen number 16 that is in favor of the ban. When we hear about all of the money problems that Calaveras County has, and we have not banned it, we've tried to regulate it, and then we hear about San Joaquin County, Tuolumne County, Amador County, all the other counties that have banned it, they have the same budget problems. And it's not going away. Probably every county in California has budget problems due to the unfunded liabilities. So don't let that color your vote today. Vote to ban it. It's too expensive to try to regulate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Board and Honorable Chair. Vivian Seichu, District 1. Gentlemen, we have met during many Board of Supervisor meetings in this respected chamber for many weeks in recent months to debate the cannabis industry's future in our county. And we have to admit, we will honestly miss all of this when everything will come to an end one way or another. Nevertheless, we do not believe that today is the day to debate, once again, the county's dire financial status, nor the technical aspects of a ban versus a regulation decision. When each of you decided to run for office, gentlemen, you knew that one day you would be called upon to make a very tough decision, and that you would have to live with the consequences of that decision. Some of you ran on an anti-cannabis platform that suits the ideological agenda of a relatively small base, but clearly does not represent the sentiment of the majority of our voter population. Now, gentlemen, the question is, what kind of political leader do you want to be remembered as? Do each of you recall the several references we have made in past public comments about your legacy in the eventuality of a ban vote? Do you want to be the kind of political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular passions and prejudices, or a leader who truly has the well-being of their jurisdiction and all their citizens at heart? When making this decision, have you thought about how many commercial businesses that thrive on the cannabis industry being in our county? Have you thought about the hardware stores, bars and restaurants, the wine industry, small businesses, and countless other commercial operations which greatly, directly or indirectly benefit from the cannabis dollar? Have you thought about the many adult professionals and often even retired citizens who hold a medical cannabis card? And have you thought about the many hard-working and law-abiding cannabis farmers who, like yourselves, only want to work hard, pay their taxes, contribute to the betterment of our county, and send their children to the same schools where your children and grandchildren go? If you enact the ban or the alternative regulatory option, then the answer is obviously a resounding no. You haven't even thought about it because you have decided to be the ideological political leaders who hope to appeal to the passions and prejudices of the least common denominator. And in order to blindly pursue this ideological agenda, and therefore by definition in a non-particularly strong fact and evidence-based fashion, you would have to break the law at a local level and at a state level. And with the pursuit of this agenda to the very end, you would even have to violate fundamental constitutional rights and perhaps even civil rights. As already pointed out many times and for the last time, think carefully about your legacy, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Mark Clark, District 2, number 17. I think you know where I stand. There ain't much I could say. Heard this 1,000 times. But I just kind of find it comical that two representatives from Cal Normal come up here, tell the board that ain't nothing you can do. We're going to sit there and put it on the ballot next summer, when this is the same group of people that took Measure B off the ballot. And had they not, we had probably had our answer one way or the other and wouldn't be here at this meeting today. But the point I want us to do is, I actually read the agenda packet, and I want to talk about the agenda. On the agricultural rezoning that was mentioned in there, there's a clause in there that once they move, they have to have the prior piece of property that they were on cleaned up and inspected and everything before they can start on this one. Well, the urgency orders came up. The reason why the urgency orders came up, they were already operating their business. So then you were trying to sit there and regulate what they were already doing. But if they're going to start off new on a new piece of property, I think all the permits, all the inspections, electrical, everything else should be done prior before they even start planning on the new spot. Because they're starting out new, they need to have it all done like any other business. And that's just my statement.
Okay. Thank you. Any further speakers?
Good afternoon. Colleen Platt with MyValleySprings.com. The goals of a permanent cannabis ordinance in Calaveras County should include the following: maintain the health, safety, and well-being of the county, its residents, and environment. Minimize risks and complaints. Reduce environmental impacts to less than significant. And allow for potential economic and social benefits to property owners, businesses, and residents. A new cannabis ordinance, whether called a ban or called a regulation, will ultimately be some mix of the concepts of bans and regulations. Regulations will ban cannabis grows in unacceptable locations. A ban will allow cannabis grows for personal and medical use under specific conditions. A permanent ordinance will be a combination of bans and regulations. Your job is to find the correct balance for Calaveras County. Supervisors have a range of alternatives to choose from here or to further modify. Commercial cannabis grows should be banned in residential areas. And strict restrictions on zoning setbacks, parcel sizes, and other conditions, such as organic cultivation, could reduce impacts to less than significant, while allowing for economic and social benefits. We encourage you to carefully consider the options and to determine feasibility of an ordinance. In order to determine feasibility, the environmental consultant for the EIR, I believe it's Mr. Jacobs, stated that the county may consider legal, economic, and social impacts. Legal, economic, and social impacts may be considered in your final ordinance decision. Please choose the best option that would maintain the health, safety, and well-being of the county and would allow the best quality of life for all Calaveras residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Trevor Whitkey, Calaveras Cannabis Alliance, District 2, longtime resident. Moved here when I was 8 years old and grew up here. I went to Mountain Oaks Home School, and I've been part of this community my entire life. I think that the prospect of what's about to come in front of you is really going to determine the future of this community, and I hope that all of you make your decision accordingly. Quickly, Peter Maurer noted earlier that there's not an equally flushed out regulatory option before the board. I would say, or I believe that to properly consider the Planning Commission's recommendation that both a ban and a regulatory alternative be equally considered by the board, a regulatory ordinance should be included as part, a fully flushed out regulatory ordinance should be included as part of this hearing today. Failure to do so prejudices these proceedings by not giving the board the ability to actually act on the regulatory option that was presented by the Planning Commission. But here's to my actual comments today. The unregulated cannabis industry provides no taxes, has provided no application fees, has not paid any money to the water board, and does not follow any laws. They use toxic chemicals that they import from across international borders and bring into our area. This follows a pattern of behavior that goes on all throughout California. Marud Gabriel has analyzed trespass grows all over the state of California and has found the exact same problems in Calaveras that he has found up in other areas where he is doing his project. The environmental damage that is being done as a result of the illegal grows and the illicit cultivation is not associated with registered grows. Registered grows have provided $7.2 million in tax revenue, $3.7 million in fees to the county, another over $1 million in fees to the Water Quality Control Board. The regulated compliant farms are compliant with all state and local laws, the Water Quality Control Board general order, and as track and trace regulations come on board in 2018, every one of these farms is going to have to be compliant with track and trace, and that is going to be where environmental and organic standards are going to be maintained. Because if anybody tries to pass something that is had pesticides used on it, they're going to fail the pesticide screening. This is happening all over in Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. This is what regulations bring. Furthermore, the economy of our industry is, we are clearly, by the size of tax revenue, the largest industry in the county. $7.2 million in tax revenue, and the excise tax far outweighs the $2.5 million in sales tax or the $600,000 in transient occupancy tax. If that $7.2 million was to be collected on 2 increments, we would be looking at $14 million in general revenues that you would have discretion over. If there are problems associated with the industry, those revenues provide the opportunity
Thank you,
to
sir.
solve it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a short break after the next speaker.
Marty Crane. So, over the last couple of years, we've heard a lot of expert testimony, well-researched, and many times we found ourselves at a place where we should be getting down to the work of figuring it all out and coming up with a product, and we didn't. We used to hear all the time that we're kicking the can down the road again. And then the Butte fire, then the tree mortality, then all the other disasters that keep coming to our doorstep. So here we are again today with some amazing testimony from the brilliance of our communities. I would never even pretend to be able to speak intelligently enough about this industry, but you've heard all that. So when you each ran for this position on the board, you may have run on a certain platform, and but when we elect you, we expect that we figure when you ran, this is what you knew. This is what we all knew, and that's why you ran on that. But once you get more information, it is, when we hired you for this job, we hired you to process all this information and come up with better solutions as we move forward, not stick with what you had before. So if, just because you made a promise once before doesn't mean that based on the same information, that might be the case. But once you have better information, we expect you to step up and be the hero. You each have a chance to be a hero today for the whole county. And I attended the two-day, one last thing, I attended the two-day strategic planning meeting, and it was acknowledged that this county has 1 year to get their economic house in order. 1 year. About 4 years ago, former CAO Lori Norton put us on a 5-year path to solvency. All we had to do was respect our reserves and stay out of the way. We weren't able to do that all that time for whatever reason, but now we're down to 1 year. So we have a job to do. We have to get down to the brass tacks, have the conversations, do the work that you were hired to do, and 3 to 2 is not good. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Oh, and I just wanted to say that I heard back from about the, what? I heard back about the evacuation. Murphy's Fire and County Social Services is handling it. Only 2 homes and several businesses were evacuated. No need for Red Cross at this time. So
Thank you very
just
much,
a little update.
Marty.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a short break. Don't know. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We were at public comment. Is there any other speakers? And ladies and gentlemen, just so we gauge time here, how many speakers are desiring to address on this agenda item from the public? See a show of hands? And that goes for folks in the adjoining room and out in the hallway. If you intend to speak during this particular agendized item, please let the board know if you intend. We have 4 speakers. Okay, thank you. You may proceed, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm going to speak just for a minute. I'm part homeowner of Calaveras County, and I use cannabis for medical reasons only, not recreational. We do like to grow it because it's cheaper that way. And I write up on the past history of cannabis and hemp, and I believe it's better for the soil and better for the economy. It produces a harvest every 4 months. It's a good harvest. It's a weed. It doesn't need a lot of watering and a lot of nurturing that the trees do. Cannabis is just a good hemp product. It's not only used for medical reasons, it's used for other recreational uses, but as far as a medical reason, I believe in hemp and cannabis, and I'd like to have the ban not be placed for those reasons. That makes sense?
It does.
That's it.
Thank you.
So, no ban.
Okay.
No ban.
Next speaker. Hello.
Hello. I'm just going to read what I wrote. My name is Sarah Hodson. I was born and raised in Mountain Ranch. I'm a college graduate, property owner, and grower. I went to Calaveras High School. My family lives here. This is my community. I've been so blessed to have the opportunity to live and make a living here in Calaveras. Cannabis farming is holding our community together. It's providing opportunities and allowing for economic development. The general plan outlines goals for economic development. Calaveras has been one of the poorest counties in California, and there have been very few viable career opportunities. There's a long-standing meth and opiate problem, and there's not a single college within the county. Most youth have leave after high school, and those that don't often face poverty and drug issues. This has finally begun to change with the increase in the cannabis industry. A ban or a regulation that is so strict that it is no different than a ban would do the exact opposite of what is good for the community. It would uproot families, force people on both sides, in the industry and not in the industry, to go elsewhere for work. It would tear the community apart, eliminate opportunities, and potentially bankrupt the county and lead to economic collapse. The strict regulation option proposed is no better than a ban. It puts approximately 90% of farms out of business. This decreases the money from the cannabis taxes down 90% as well. It would create a huge land exodus and simultaneously a land rush, as every grower wishing to stay in business tries to find a viable relocation plan. Growers have already spent tens of thousands of dollars to comply with the law, and many have not been given due process. Some growers' applications have been processed, some have not, some have been put through the ringer, others have been seemingly overlooked in the process. The urgency ordinance is not the first regulation attempt. There was a permanent regulation ordinance passed or voted on by the board before that, back in January, February of 2016. The EIR was initiated because of and related to this document. Personally, I have spent well over $200,000 to come into compliance and develop my business to fit around the stated rules and regulations. I've been through an appeal process. I've made mistakes along the way with some of the things that I've done, especially related to the grading and environmental concerns. I've learned much about better ways of doing things, and I'm working to mitigate damage and correct my mistakes. I'm in process of a $100,000 regrading remediation project on my land, and I'm happy to be doing it because I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution, and I can be used as an example of how regulation is working to correct problems that have been created by an unregulated industry. I can assure you that the cartels are not going to be fixing their damages.
Next speaker. Bonnie.
Good afternoon. I'm thinking about money. I am thinking about money. In 2.5 months, recreational marijuana will be legal. Last year, I predicted it would take 3 years for things to settle down. So that means this year I've got to say 2 years till things settle down. Sheriff thought it was going to be maybe 3 or 4 more years till things settle down. I'm thinking of my IHSS program needing $5 million a year. You know the state's pulling out their share of the IHSS program. I think it's only a matter of time before we can expect the federal government might just pull the plug on Medicaid. Then where are we going to be? Where's the money going to come from? $5 million to pay people to stay out of facilities. I get the Stockton Record, and I get the, I call it the Dud. It's not the Daily Union Democrat, but it's the Sonora paper. And my understanding is they're working on their indoor grows. Both Board of Supervisors are doing their considerations on the size of their indoor grows. So I haven't heard that there's an outright ban. I think talking about disposal of illegal grows. Whenever I hear of how many tons has been buried, that to me is money being squandered. If we could find a way to locate a lab where they could process the cannabis, separate the compounds, do the experimentation, find out which works on what, because I'm telling you, I cared for a brain cancer patient. Cannabis came in a little brown pill. It was called Marinol. When he got sick to his stomach from the chemotherapy, he'd take one of those and he wouldn't throw up. He couldn't throw up because he had $175 pills of chemotherapy in his body. Kept him from having seizures, epileptic seizures. It is a medicine. We need to perfect what treatment is good for which compound in the substance. Then we can say that we've done our due diligence and explored all the avenues necessary to decide if this is a beneficial compound, or it is truly destructive. And we heard about alcohol already. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Prapana Randall Smith, District 3 voter. I think that with everything that you've all heard today and everything that you've read, that it's very clear that you have before you enough information to pass a reasonable regulation, strict, and do so in such a way that you can satisfy, to a degree, that, well, actually satisfy all the legitimate concerns of the neighbors. To the extent that they're illegitimate concerns, you're never going to satisfy those. Just never going to happen. But today, finally, we're going to know where all of you stand. Well, we think we know where at least a couple of you stand. But at whatever you do today, you own it. No more blaming the old board. No more blaming anybody. You own the outcome of your decision today. VJ here thinks that you should regulate. So do I. I'm very, very concerned about what will happen if you go for a ban. It'll just tear this place apart, continue to tear this place apart. And I will also point out for the record that I actually believe that these guys, this side here has been very well behaved and has been well behaved for quite a while. We haven't heard that over here, and these two. What these two did today was just atrocious. I'll say more about that during public comment at the end of the meeting, I guess tomorrow, right? Tomorrow we'll have public comment at the end of the meeting. But we got to get past all the anger, the hatred. We got to get past this. And the way to do it is to regulate. This industry will then go right back into the fabric of society. It won't even be noticed. You don't even know it's here. Go back to being a very quiet industry doing its thing. And finally, I do want to ask for this. If you do regulate, please include manufacturing and distribution. 7% taxes on everything that's manufactured. It's a lot of extra money. Distribution is going to be the key to this whole thing. And finally, one last thing. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about micro-business. Micro-business license number 12 is a state-level license. There is no micro-business license at the local level. To get a state-level micro-business license, you have to have 3 of 4 categories: cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, transport, and retail. If you have 3 of those, and it can be across the state, not in one jurisdiction, then you apply for a micro-business license from the state, and it's the most expensive license, $60,000 to the state to get that license. So please allow manufacturing and distribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers regarding public comment on this agenda item?
Hi, my name is Nick Bertolero. Pardon me if I go over something that we've already talked about. I was working today, appraising. I talked to a lot of people throughout West Point, District 2, and also in the 20s. Those are my areas. Some things that I think are common sense for both regulation and the ban. For regulation, a tiered system. So for people who own, 2 acres, maybe they shouldn't be able to do 22,000 square feet because that does start to encroach on other people. Maybe they should have a limit of up to 1,000. And for 5 acres, maybe, 5,000 or whatever. But a tiered system would seem to work better than a one-size-fits-all, because a 22,000 square foot grow on a 20-acre parcel is a lot easier to mitigate than one on a 2-acre parcel. As for if you ban it, I really want to strongly suggest allowing the outdoor cultivation of up to 6 plants at least. I personally have had an indoor grow medically. It costs over $2,000 just to run 6 plants for yourself in startup costs. That's not something that every patient can afford. That's not something and that's just in the startup cost. That's not including electricity, which, of course, we all know is environmentally unfriendly. Why would you want to spend money on electricity, waste our energy that could be put towards lighting our houses to grow this plant that can just easily be grown outdoors? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Katrine Lambie from West Point, and I just have 2 things to say. I have heard people here say a lot today that this is about money, it's about money. Well, I want to say that in our community, it's not just about money. We have gotten to know some growers very well. They are active and positive participants in our community. They have improved the fabric of our community. And for some people, they've made friendships. So it's not just about money, it's about also a renewal of energy in some communities like West Point. And the second point I want to make is that I've heard that this should be done for our children, for the children, their children dying, children. First of all, we're not going to have many children left in this county if we kick out every young person. And secondly, I run a youth center, and I have yet to see a young child die of marijuana poisoning. However, in the 17 years I've done this work, I have seen many children's lives impacted by meth and alcohol. And all of a sudden, these 2 words have disappeared out of our discourse. That is a real problem for our children right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Aaron Elliott, District 4. Thank you all for what you do. I love this county. I love this place. If I can give you guys more money, even if you won't let me pay you taxes, if we can get a donation to help fund the roads or something, I just want to help this place. I love the political stuff I've learned about, the beautiful, eclectic, eccentric people, the passion. I really appreciate all of you. I actually had a limerick poem Mark Twain reference, but I'm afraid my supervisor might walk out on me if I do anything. But sometimes art and poetry are ways to get through cognitive dissonance when we have a block in our head and we're afraid to get to pragmatism and put past emotion. But instead, I guess I'll just go to, I heard something that you guys might be able to answer questions. And one I had was, Mr. Mills or anyone, if you could tell me your opinion on why cannabis is illegal, that would be phenomenal for me to hear. And also, if we are going to increase the number of calls, criminal complaints, and decrease the amount of officers, as our wonderful Sheriff DiBasilio has mentioned, how that will make this place safer, and if you think it will make this place safer. And if that is the opinion of the rest of the staff, why you feel differently about that, and why you feel like no regulation on cannabis can at all make this place safer. I would love to hear it. I appreciate you. I love you all, your reflections of myself.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hi, board, staff. My name is Jim Casey, District 2. I taught at Calaveras Unified, taught for Calaveras Unified at West Point for 20 years. And first of all, I love the staff here. When the young lady was up here singing, everyone stopped what they were doing. I know you're busy people, but to a person, they stopped, turned this, and I think they were smiling, so it could have been too bad. Thanks for having that kind of sense of humor. And real quick, I want to follow up on what Katrine Lambie said, because I've had kids in my class from 500, 600, 700 kids over 20 years. Marijuana was never a problem. It was always they were hungry, or meth, or alcohol, or didn't have a place to stay, or didn't have a backpack. So every time we get desperate, we say, well, what about the kids? And I am not a grower, I'm not a user, but I have made a lot of friends in the cannabis industry. What I did is I went out and bought some books, which I always do, go to Amazon, buy some books. I have a couple of really good titles if you're interested. And then I decided to go out and kind of insinuate myself into several grows. You know, can I come help? Can I come see your place? And after asking and figuring I wasn't a spy, I went out there and visited. And I got to know quite a few people. And I really like these people. I mean, there are a couple of nuts out there, but they're kind of nuts who better be growing cannabis because they're not going to be able to do anything else. But for the most part, they're nice folks, hardworking folks, earnest folks. They eat their vegetables, they say their prayers, and they're not demons. And so I would ask this group here, there's a gentleman up here that offered to let them come out and see the operation. Please, please, please take advantage of that. If you have not been to a well-run grow site, then you can't really address the issue. I was very skeptical at first, and when I looked at the list, there were 70 grows in my area. So I thought I'd better get out and look and see what's happening. But the beloved blueberry farm is now a grow. With a few blueberries thrown in. So I brought some cookies over, got to know my neighbor. Here's my number. In case anything happens, we can call each other. And it's worked out. I'm far less fearful of all the draconian things that can happen. And all the research I've done, Colorado, Washington, and in Oregon, the sky did not fall. It wasn't sometimes an easy transition, but busloads of kids weren't driven off a cliff by a stone bus driver. It just has to be kept reasonable. And so if we're going to make an argument for or against the ban, they have to be reasonable arguments. We have to address the reality, not just our ideology, so that we can have our way. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other public speakers on agenda item number 4? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, it is nearly 5 o'clock. Prior to adjourning for the day, we will be coming back tomorrow. That would be at 9 o'clock. Okay? But before we adjourn, there is one issue that we need to address, County Council. Would you please explain Rule 27 as it applies here, if it does?
Rule 27 of the Board Rules and Procedures discusses voting, and it does require that a supervisor who is absent from all or a part of 1, a public hearing, 2, an item that requires findings, or 3, an item that is quasi-judicial in nature, that they may subsequently vote on the matter if the supervisor has reviewed all evidence received during his or her absence. That can be done either by listening to the clerk's recording or read a true and complete transcript of the proceedings, and that they must state that they have reviewed the evidence or testimony that they did not receive while they were absent into the record before the vote is taken.
Okay. Thank you very much. Supervisor Mills, Supervisor Clapp, is there a statement you want to make regarding that particular rule at this time?
since we haven't got had an opportunity to actually review or look that part of the transcript over, that would be something that we would probably be able to take up before we vote tomorrow, if that's when we're going to vote.
Okay, it's acceptable to me. Supervisor Clark, you concur? Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be continuing the hearing on item number 4, and that'll be board deliberation, and we'll be taking a vote tomorrow on that. Then we'll continue with item number 5.
Chair, is it possible to,
Order, sir. What proof are we going to have that they actually do what they're supposed to do?
counsel?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me address this point of order. There are elected officials. This is going to sound funny. Would their word be good enough for you?
Probably not.
You have to just live with it.
Yeah.
I will make sure that that's being done, and I will personally testify to that. And I'm not going to sit down and buy popcorn with them.
If you need to babysit me, it's too late. Chair, I'd like to bring up a point that if we're going to have item number 5 extend beyond a normal time tomorrow because of the timing, would it be more preferable to set that item off to another meeting or another date so that because the most critical one is item number 4. Would the board consider that? Because I know, for instance, I won't be available on Thursday. If we should have to run into Thursday or Friday, I'm not going to be here, and I know Supervisor Tofanelli is going to be gone next Tuesday afternoon.
I think I want to poll the board on that. But before we call for the poll, I would like to know if the availability tomorrow
Is a problem.
by the board is acceptable to the board members. And if we do extend, we'll have to reschedule that extension or continuation. County Council, are we permitted to do that?
Just so I'm clear with the question is, are you referring to whether you finish item 4 or whether if the board is not able to finish number 4, you can certainly continue the matter to another date certain, another board meeting that is already pre-scheduled. That is certainly something that this board has the discretion to do. We would just have to look at what point it would be heard next and look at the Brown Act requirements for posting the agenda and meet those requirements, which staff would do.
Okay, it's the board's intention to finish item 4 tomorrow.
Correct.
I think we're speaking on item 5, which is the public hearing on the ordinance rescinding 17.91. If we were able to address that tomorrow, but not finish by, say, 5 o'clock, we could probably reschedule that to a next regular board meeting?
That would apply to 5 as well. However, if this board, the board does have the option or the discretion to just table that item in its entirety to a future board meeting, considering we are just finishing public comment on number 4, and then that would allow for a full day's discussion on number 4 tomorrow. That would certainly be in the discretion of the board, though.
Okay. I think we'll make that decision as a board tomorrow, see where we stand on item 4 and item 5.
I agree.
Does everybody concur with that? Supervisor Clapp?
Yeah, we closed public comment.
Yeah, public comment on item 4 is closed. Polling the board to, if we convene tomorrow in the hopes of finishing item 4, can we, or would you be in agreement to postpone item 5 to a later date on a regularly scheduled meeting? Which we have to check Brown Act as far as agendizing that item and public notice. But in other words, we want to finish 4 tomorrow And if we can't finish 5, we would actually send that to another board meeting.
Yeah, I'd go for that.
Okay, Supervisor Mills? I agree. Supervisor Toffenelli? I'm sorry, Gary.
It doesn't, I'm fine with whatever
Mike?
the board, I'm fine with whatever the board wants to do, but I think tomorrow we need to find out when we're gonna close and then see how much public comment's gonna be on item number 5. If it's a full day like we did today, then obviously we won't be able to finish tomorrow. And Supervisor Mills is correct. Immediately after the 24th meeting, I'm leaving for the LAFCO conference in San Diego, so.
Okay, it's understood. Supervisor Garamendi?
I'll stick around till the job's done.
Okay, and I also concur. It's going to be a long day tomorrow probably, but Supervisor Garamendi, you have a comment?
Thank you. Before we break, I just want to, in the 10 months that I've sat in this chair, we have heard tons of public comment. I've heard people who've used humor, I've heard people who've used irony, I've had people threaten, I've had people yell. We have heard a lot of stuff. And you need to know that that is your right. It is guaranteed to you under the Constitution to petition your government. You have to stay within the rules. You know, you have your 3 minutes, but that is your right. And anytime your public officials deny you that right, they are denying you your rights under the Constitution. So we don't have a prohibition on singing. I think it was brought up that poetry, art, music are different ways to politically express yourself, and I hope that we do better. I think we are better than that. We need to let people have the opportunity to express themselves and to petition their government. And that is very important, I think, to our democratic process and to me personally. So I will never turn my back and walk out on a room just because I disagree with the way that you decide to communicate with your government. Thank you.
Order, please. Order. Supervisor Mills, you want to say something, obviously?
Well, it's pretty obvious that you've got a note beside you that says, "Let the girls sing," so I don't know what to do with that either.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we will convene at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.